I can call this meeting to order. Good evening, folks. We have, as you can well imagine, a few agendas we're going to be following. We just come out of a closed session meeting that dealt with a few items, and we are now going into a special meeting of council, and that's going to be followed by our committee of the whole agenda, and that will be followed by our regular council meeting. With that, I'm going to make some changes this evening because I know we have some folks in the audience that probably don't want to sit here all night. So, especially the younger folks that will be getting some presentations and some others that the chief is going to be recognizing this evening. So I'm going to ask for council's blessing to shuffle around the deck a bit here tonight, if you don't mind, so we have some folks not sitting around for the better part of the evening. With that, I am going to call upon Councillor B. Kenny to start us off with a prayer, and that's going to be followed by Mr. Joe Longfellow to start us off with the national anthem. Councillor Kenny.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for thy blessings. Dear Lord, I pray that your words, which are in our hearts, will assist us with making difficult decisions. Give us the knowledge and foresight to work together for the good of this great city, and keep us ever mindful of our citizens who have entrusted us to lead by example. We especially remember tonight the family of Jim Flaherty, Minister of Finance, and we ask that you be with his family. This we ask in your precious name. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. Car ton bras est porté le pays, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. As always, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure.
Members of council, I'll be looking for a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you, members. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, I'll now move on to, before I get into the public hearing under the Planning Act, I'm going to go right to presentations as well as delegations. If members of council don't mind, that's why I'm going to shuffle the deck a bit. You're fine with that? Good. So I'm going to call upon Chief Cartwright to meet me at the podium. Chief Cartwright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council, staff, people in the audience and the viewing audience. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to make 4 presentations to some community groups and businesses that assist us over the course of the last couple of years in our training program and our fire prevention public education program. This is the second evening we've done this, and we certainly appreciate the cooperation of council, and particularly the mayor, with regards to shuffling the deck for our purposes. We do appreciate that, and thank you. As most people know, we're busy in the community doing different things with regards to public education, fire prevention. More importantly, the big assistance has been with regards to our training program. We've literally saved thousands and tens of thousands of dollars with the assistance of various businesses in making donations to the fire department and or allowing us to use their buildings for training purposes, and we certainly do appreciate that. Mr. Heil, would you like to come forward too and assist me with this? First company we're going to recognize this evening is ADM Milling. I believe there's a representative of that company here. Please come forward.
Is it a familiar face?
How are you?
Good. Okay,
Thank you. Rick, how are you?
Thank you, bud.
Good. Chief. Thanks very much, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
help. A representative from Canadian Tire, Port Colborne, please come forward. Thanks.
Another familiar face. Yeah. Great job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for everything you do for us. Thank you. A representative or representatives from Lakeshore Catholic High School, in particular their arts program. Anybody present, please? They assisted us last year with Bill Teal, who was one of our representatives. He's since retired. We had a number of fire hydrants installed around the property edge and directly in front of the fire hall. And Bill came with the idea of getting the arts class to come forward and decorate the fire hydrants. So basically, we turned that project over to them. And if you're driving by the fire hall, take a look in. There's 6 or 8 hydrants. We're hoping to add more to that around the perimeter of our parking lot. And they're all decorated in various soldiers and firefighters and various other people in the way they are. So we do appreciate your assistance in that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the last one is Pinty's Delicious Foods representative, please come forward.
Who else? Mr. Pinty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you again. Thank you very much for your assistance, Mayor Badaway and Mr. Heil. I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Well, good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure this evening now. Should I do that over again? Mike wasn't on. Good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure this evening to recognize some great athletes once again here representing the city of Port Colborne. And it's my pleasure to welcome the Port Colborne Pee Wee Girls Wave Hockey Team to our chamber this evening. B, come on up here. Come on up here. I got to call B up here. It's most appropriate because she is a former hockey player. Believe it or not.
First girl.
You see that scar right here? Right, B?
Yeah.
I keep telling her to keep the stick down. And if you guys ever watch her behind the horseshoe here too, she's got a hockey stick back there. If I don't behave, she gives me one of these. But it's my pleasure to welcome, along with Councillor Kenny, our former hockey player on council, the Pee Wee Girls Wave Hockey Team to our chamber this evening. And with that, I do want to call you guys up here right now, right off the bat. Come on up here, girls. Guys, you guys can come right on up here. Watch B. She doesn't have her hockey stick on her now, so you're all right. Come on up here, guys. Come on in here, guys. Right on in here.
I didn't have nice things.
Come on over here.
Like this.
I want you guys on camera for a while because I'm sure that those who are watching on COGECO are probably going to see your smiling faces well into the future. Hopefully wearing the red and white soon. I have to say on your behalf, those that are in the gallery this evening, but more importantly, and equally as important, is those folks that are watching on COGECO, and of course on behalf of members of City Council, that I want to congratulate you guys for a job well done, for your Niagara Region Girls House League Championship win, but not only a championship win, undefeated. Twenty-five wins and no losses. And then you took this record straight out through the playoffs as well. And no losses throughout the playoffs. So literally an undefeated season from start to finish. Girls, well done. I do want to congratulate the girls on this accomplishment. And from what I understand, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. Tim, come on up here. Their head coach, Tim Hoyle. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but first season too, right? First season. First season, undefeated, and of course, I actually watched the girls play, and I tell you, you guys are outstanding. Outstanding. I used to coach girls hockey as well, back in my day, and I can't believe the quality that you guys have brought to the ice in comparison to the quality way back when I was your age. But and that was a long time ago. That's enough out of you. But I tell you guys are inspiring, not only hockey players, but especially those female hockey players that want to play hockey. You guys are inspiring those girls to come out and put the blades on and really show up the boys, quite frankly. And I tell you, you girls are playing just fantastic, so keep it up. But as a parent of two girls as well, I have two girls that don't play hockey, but they play basketball and everything else. I understand the sacrifices that you've given throughout this past season, both in your personal lives, but in particular within your school lives as well. So to be able to give that sacrifice, come out and wear that jersey that says Port Colborne on the front and represent each and every one of us, you should be extremely proud of yourselves and what you accomplished this year. Job well done. With that, I as well want to extend my congratulations and appreciation to Tim. Tim, you and your staff. I'm sure it's not you alone. Do you have others that are beside you at coaching? Guys, come on up here. Come on up, because I know you got Linda Blanchard. I know Sherry Cousineau's in Florida right now. And I do want to make special mention of Sherry's daughter, Kendra. Kendra was very upset she couldn't be here with you girls tonight. I went for my chiropractor appointment the other day, which, by the way, I have to go to because of hockey. So now you all know what you have to look forward to as you get to be my age. But I know Kendra really wanted to be here tonight as well with you guys and with the team, and hopefully she can watch this on TV in the future. But I did want to make her give some special mention to Kendra too, because she can't be here with you, and of course she wanted to be so desperately to be here. But Linda, Morris, where's Morris? Morris is back there, as well as Sandra. Where's Sandra? Sandra back there somewhere? Sandy, are you there? Where are you, Sandy? Get over here, Sandy. Come on, get over here. And Tim, and where's Jay? Jay, there you are. Jay, how you doing? I want to thank you guys as well for the job you guys did, because of course, without your time, of course, we wouldn't be able to have these girls on the ice. So to all the coaching staff, thank you as well. So it's my pleasure, girls, to present to you with some certificates this evening and a plaque. So we're going to get to the certificates first. So I'm going to squeeze by here, and I'm going to actually call each one of you up here, one by one. And what I want you to do after you're finished is I want you to go up here, up front here, and line up here, and we're going to get a great picture of you guys. So first, and if I pronounce your name wrong, please tell me, okay? Because I can see this first one I'm going to pronounce wrong. Okay, Tasia. Tasia Schmay?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Ah, right on. Tasia, congratulations. Well done. Now I'm going to read the first certificate. It's presented to Tasia Schmay in recognition of your outstanding contribution to the Port Colborne Pee Wee Girls Wave hockey team and your achievement as Niagara Region Girls House League champions. May I extend congratulations on behalf of members of City Council and all the citizens of the City of Port Colborne for your undefeated season. Your dedication and commitment to your hockey team reinforces the value of teamwork evident throughout our community. Win together today, and you walk together forever. Well done. Now I have to say, guys, I say that statement a lot in certificates and whether it be graduation or it be sport. And it's very important to me because it was something that I grew up with. And I can't take credit for the actual saying. Now, any of you Philadelphia Flyer fans out there may recall, sorry, Buch, sorry, buddy, but you'll recall back in 1974, you're not going to like this, Rob, but back in 1974 when Fred Scherr was coaching the Philadelphia Flyers at the time, and they were in the finals against the Buffalo Sabres, he was the one that came up with that saying. And it just stuck with me throughout the years as I played, how important it is as a team, that as you guys are at your youngest age now, this is something you're never going to forget. And you're going to talk about when you're our age, and you're going to reminisce about. And remember that goal you scored, and remember that one you saved, and remember that undefeated season that we had. We did it together as a team, and that's why it's so important to win together today, but to walk together forever. And that's something that you can always take past your season this year, even past your hockey career when you get to be older. Okay, win together today and walk together forever. So with that, I'm going to call on Jaden Klein. Jaden, congratulations. Well done. Well done. Kendra Cousineau. Kendra's in Florida, enjoying that nice hot weather now. But I'll give this to you, Tim, and you can take with you. Morgan Coverdale. Good job. Congratulations. Well done. Chloe D'Amico Grayway. You can't tell you're a Grayway, can you? There you go, hon. Congratulations. Chloe DeRoy. Good job. Well done. Allie Grenier. Congratulations. Good job. Alyssa Hoyle. Good job, Alyssa. Congratulations. She's not here? Jennifer Kozelj? Kozelj.
Yeah.
Got it. I was close. Good job, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Abby Leishman. Good job. Congratulations. Okay. Michaela McNulty? Did I get it? Michaela McNulty. Michaela? Congratulations, son. Good job. Good job. Kristen Outman? Kristen, congratulations. Good job. Emily Rustin. Emily. Good job. That's a hockey that's been around Pro Colborne for a while. Now, did you play like your grandfather? Because if you did, you must have been in the box a lot. Riley Simpson? Riley? Congratulations. Well done. Good job. I should say your grandfathers and uncles and aunts, the whole Rustin family. Lauren Steckley? Lauren? Good job. Congratulations. Abigail Thalen? Thanks, Council. Thalen? Congratulations. Good job. Linda Blanchard. Linda, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And Sherry Cousineau. Now, I'm going to get you guys to say a big hello to Sherry and Kendra, okay? Because I'm sure they might be going on YouTube later on today to get to see this. Morris Coverdale? Morris, good job. Sandra Hoyle. Come on up, Sandy. And while she's making her way up, Tim Hoyle. Tim, come on up. Sandy, good job. Congratulations. Well done. Yes, you do. Yeah. And Jay Rustin. Jay, man. You can come up here too. Now as well, girls, we have a plaque here for you. And this plaque is presented to the Port Colborne Pee Wee Girls Wave Hockey Team, Niagara Region Girls House League Champions. Congratulations on behalf of members of City Council, but more importantly, girls, congratulations on behalf of each and every resident that you represented throughout this season. So not only did you go undefeated. As a team, we as a community, we as a city, and you representing the city of Port Colborne went undefeated. And for that, good on you and congratulations. Your dedication and commitment to your team reinforces the value of teamwork evident throughout our community. And once again, win together today, walk together forever. Always remember that. And you're going to remember that someday when you're sitting in the backyard, drinking a glass of milk. And reminiscing about when you were this age, winning this, and you'll remember this forever. So girls, congratulations. I do have a plaque here for you. It has your team picture on it. Again, just to show those in the audience. Okay. So something that they're going to be proud of forever, we're going to give you this.
Yes,
We're going to say, now, we do have two members of your team that aren't here. Okay, so I want you to look at that camera and say hi to Sherry and Kendra. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Sherry and Kendra.
That's great. Great job, guys. So we get some pictures? What you guys want to do is you guys want to go this way. So you guys stay right there. You guys come on up here. Come on in. You guys come on in there. Perfect. I know we got some fun girls here. What's
And hold still for a while. Hold still for a while, so. Hey girls, let's do blue cheese. 1, 2, 3, blue cheese! Hold still, hold still. Hold still. There's all kinds of photographers here want your pictures.
Okay, girls, now what we're going to do is, we're going to set you guys up the next Michigan game next show at the Pirates. How's that sound? Yeah! Okay. Big job, man. Big Evan, I'm going to do delegations first. Delegations first. Should I have him put it? Actually, maybe they should put the Leaf uniform on. Hey, once. Okay, folks, we're going to move on to the delegations, and then we're going to go back to our special meeting of council. If I can call upon Mr. Albert Garofalo of the Burt Miller Nature Club. Albert, there you are. Albert, welcome. If you want to come on up, press the gray button, and you're all set.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and citizens of Port Colborne for this opportunity to speak here today. My name is Albert Garofalo. I'm with the Burt Miller Nature Club, and as you may remember, the club in partnership with the City of Port Colborne and a number of local cottage associations are working on a beach enhancement project along the Lake Erie shoreline to help restore things there and to plant beach grass, build boardwalks, and to install interpretive signs. This project is supported by the Minister of the Environment's Great Lakes Guardian Community Fund, and the project aims to mobilize local citizens and high school students to take action to protect and restore this corner of the Great Lakes. The Honourable Minister of the Environment, Jim Bradley, will be attending an event that we're having. Our first event that we plan to have for this project will be this April 22nd on Earth Day. I wanted to extend an invitation to anyone from Council to attend that event. It will be taking place at 10:30 a.m. At Centennial Beach Park, and again on Earth Day. And there'll be about 45 students from Lakeshore Catholic High who will be attending to plant beach grass. As I mentioned, the minister will be there, so anyone who'd like to attend, please do come along. And following that, we will be having on Thursday, April 24th, we'll be having an open house at the Shirkston Community Center. And we'll be speaking a little bit more about the project. So anyone from the public interested in attending and hearing more about things, please do come out to that. Following that open house, we'll have a second beach grass planting event, which will take place at the foot of Wildwood Road, and that will be we'll invite local high school students from Port High to take part in that planting, and then we'll have a third event, likely the first weekend of May, where that will be open to all the general public, and we hope a number of people come out to the foot of Pleasant Beach Road, where we'll be planting beach grass, and we'll post that in local papers announcing the time and more details about that. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to mention that and let people know and invite people to come out if you can to help us restore natural beach topography and the sand dune ecosystems along the Lake Erie shoreline. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. Well done, Albert. Members of council, any questions or comments? With none? Albert, great job. Thank you. Our second delegation this evening is Mr. Erno Rossi. Erno is the chair and treasurer of Save Our Lighthouse, and he is here today to request the endorsement of an application to the region of Niagara under the Lakefront Enhancement Strategy. Members of council, you do have it in your package on page 25. Mr. Rossi. Erno, welcome.
Thank you. So, greetings again to our mayor and council from our Save Our Lighthouse Houses group, and we're asking for your endorsement, as you just said, to continue to discuss with council and the region their lakeshore enhancement strategy as part of our lighthouse preservation project. You know that Fisheries and Oceans responded verbally to our request for heritage status and ownership of our two lighthouses. And basically the agreement that is evolving, the agreement offers us a multi-year lease on these properties. This would conclude with the permanent turnover of the properties to us at no cost. We agreed that the Coast Guard would be allowed free access to the properties for maintenance and for taking care of the lighthouse signals, the light signals. We agreed to the terms and expect a formal written agreement with Fisheries and Oceans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Members of council, any questions or comments? Now, as you can see, the correspondence that Mr. Rossi has forwarded to us, which is page 25 within your agenda, he is requesting that members of council pass a motion this evening to endorse their position as well as further their efforts to declare this, these sites. Councillor Demery, did you want to move that?
I did, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so if you want to read it out, Councillor. Page 26.
Bear with me just 1 second. I'm just pulling it up. Page 26. The City of Port Colborne and its council is aware of the current important initiative being led by the local group known as Save Our Lighthouses, which seeks to acquire, preserve, and restore to original condition 2 iconic and heritage lighthouses located in Port Colborne at the Lake Erie entrance to the Welland Canal, both of which have been publicly declared surplus by the Canadian government.
Whereas.
In 2013, the successful annual Canal Days Festival in 2013 included very popular lighthouse tours of these century-old lighthouses in its inaugural year. The City Council endorses an application by Save Our Lighthouses to the Lakefront Enhancement Strategy Program being administered by the region of Niagara. At this time, with consideration of the short RFP application timetable, this endorsement does not imply automatic financial support by the city of by Port Colborne City Council, but certainly provides moral and political support for this high-profile project undertaking the to enhance the Lake Erie waterfront in the best interest of the public realm.
Thank you, Councillor. If we can add a therefore at the end of that resolution, that now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Port Colborne supports the efforts of the Save the Lighthouse Group and their applications that they may proceed with.
Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Port Colborne supports the initiative okay, of the Save the Lighthouse Group. Okay. And how do we want the rest of it to read?
And supports the applications that they might proceed with.
Okay.
That's what you're looking for, no? That's what you're looking for?
And supports the applications they may proceed with.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And you are proceeding with an application on the Lakefront Enhancement Strategy at the regional level.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
We're good?
We're good. Seconder, Councillor Butters, any questions or comments to that? Erno, any further comments?
No.
You're good? Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
your time
you.
this evening. Members of council, to the motion. First off, I need a leave of council. Councillor Steele, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments to that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. To the motion, it has been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Further, your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get back on track, Madam Clerk. So now we're going to go and move into, Evan, the public meeting under the Planning Act. We do have an application for zoning bylaw amendment, report of Planning and Development Services, report number 2014-21. And the subject is a public meeting report for zoning bylaw amendment, file number D1402-14, 2272 3rd Concession Road. Evan, she's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just want to remind Council and members in the gallery that there is a few planning items on the agenda tonight. This presentation deals exclusively with a zoning bylaw amendment for 2272 3rd Concession Road. Nothing more, nothing less. So the purpose of this meeting, pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, is to consider an application to amend the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 1150/97/81 as amended. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning on the lands legally known as part of Lot 15, Concession 4, former Township of Humberstone, now in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 2272 3rd Concession Road. The method of notice, notice of public meeting was administered in accordance with Section 34, subsection 12, subsection 13, and subsection 14 of the Planning Act as amended, and Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. The notice of public meeting was mailed to property owners within 120 meters of the property on March 21st, 2014. Public notice sign was posted on the property on or before March 24th, 2014. Notice of public meeting was circulated to required commenting agencies and relevant city departments on March 21st, 2014, and a copy of the public notice was also posted on the website on March 21st, 2014. Explanation of the procedure to be followed. I will be presenting the report. Followed by the report, I will be reading required legal notification, followed by comments of the applicant, if there are any, following questions of clarification to planning staff and or the applicant from council. Following that, oral presentations and or questions by members of the public. And following that, an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the zoning bylaw amendment, and then finally an explanation of future meetings. So the zoning is proposed to be changed. Oh, yeah, sorry, Donnie. Okay, the zoning is proposed to change from A, agricultural, to NFR, non-farm residence, A, 376, agricultural purposes only, and EP, environmental protection. This rezoning is being sought to satisfy Committee of Adjustment conditions for consent of the subject property in file B0114 PC. Next slide, Donnie. So a copy of the notification. Sorry, Donnie, next slide. I don't have a mouse that works. So the property is currently, back up, Donnie. Okay, sorry. Well, that'll straighten itself out. The property is currently zoned, designated agricultural in the City of Port Colborne's official plan. The northern portion of the property, that splotch in green just north of the, or just above the arrow, is zoned, designated in the official plan environmental protection area. And Schedule B1 of the official plan identifies the green area as provincially significant wetland. Next slide. Thank you. The property is currently zoned A, agricultural, under the city's zoning bylaw. Next slide, whoever. Thank you. And the application seeks to rezone the property to, the wetland area will be rezoned to EP, environmental protection. The agricultural portion of the property will be rezoned to A376, agricultural purposes only. And the area with the residents in the south west corner of the property will be rezoned to non-farm residents. And just to inform you, the consent application seeks to separate the non-farm residence portion of the property from the rest of the property. So the comments that have been received as of date, engineering has reviewed the zoning bylaw amendment, and this is from Engineering and Operation Services. They've reviewed the zoning bylaw amendment, have no adverse comments. Building Division has no concerns at this time. And the Regional Municipality of Niagara concludes that Regional Development Services staff supports the approval of this application from a provincial and regional planning perspective, subject to local planning requirements and any comments of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, as the proposed rezoning will address conditions of approval requested by the region for the preceding consent application as noted above. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're now open to comments from the applicant.
Thank you, Evan. If I can ask the applicant if there's any comments. Mr. Lambie, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This is a pretty straightforward application tonight. Purpose of the rezoning application is to satisfy a condition of a severance that was granted about 2 months ago. If you look at your sketch, part 1 is the parcel that has the existing dwelling. That's being retained by the applicant, and he's selling off the vacant agricultural land to the north. Part 1 will be rezoned to a residential only zone. Part 2 will be dual zone for agricultural purposes, but to prohibit a new dwelling. And the northern part of Part 2 will be rezoned to environmental protection to protect the wetland and bushland that's on the north part of the property. So that's basically the application. If the members of council have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lambie. Members of council, any questions or comments? With none, thank you.
Thank you.
Members of council, are there any questions of staff? With none? Evan, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we're now open to any questions or presentations by members of the public.
Thank you, Evan. Are there anybody or is there anybody in the gallery that would like to speak on this application? With none? On this application? Pardon me?
I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if I'm on the list for speaking.
Okay, this application is for, which one did you want to speak on? Not this one? The next one? Okay, great, thank you. Evan, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the zoning bylaw amendment. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the notice of the passing of the bylaw will be given notice. And I also have a sign-in sheet at the front of the room that is specifically for this application, that if any persons wish to receive notice of decision, you can sign the form. It's available at the front of the room. I'll make it available at the back of the room shortly after the presentation. Now, an explanation of the future minutes, Mr. Mayor. Future hearings, sorry. This concludes the public hearing under the Planning Act. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will be placed on the council's agenda at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan, great job. You're getting the hang of this, eh?
Yes, thank you. You're too kind.
Thanks, Evan. Members of council, with no further business with respect to this planning and public meeting, if I can have a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We are now going to move on to the Committee of the Whole meeting agenda, which I'm sure most of you folks are here for. We're going to start off with asking the clerk if she has any addendum items to introduce to us this evening.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, there is one item that I would like to draw to Council's attention this evening. A number of delegation requests were received after the deadline concerning the staff report on the medical marijuana production facility. A list of those delegations has been circulated to you, and a leave of council would be required should you decide that you would like to provide permission for them to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Grigg. Members of council, instead of waiting until this subject comes up, and in all fairness and due respect to the people that may want to speak and get your thoughts together, I want to take this motion now so that by the time we actually get to that point in this agenda, these folks will have their thoughts together and of course be a lot easier to step up to the podium if so choose. So with that, members, if I can ask for leave first. Councillor Butters, Councillor Bodner, are there any questions or comments for leave? For leave? No. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. To the motion of allowing these delegates to speak, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Doucette.
I don't know if anyone's going to appreciate this, but at the same time, I believe we need to hear all the information necessary to make this decision. What I don't want, and what I want everyone to understand, is that this is not a public meeting. This is a council meeting. The public meeting was 2 weeks ago. So I don't want to hear, and I personally believe that we should not be hearing the same thing over and over and over. We've heard it And I appreciate everything that was said and everything that was done and everything that's been sent to us. I believe all that information is important and has been important in the decision making. But to hear people, you're talking a council meeting with 34 possible delegates, and that's not counting the ones in front of that. That's extensive and should not be allowed at a council meeting. That's what the public meetings are for. So I want everyone to be aware. Please, if you have new information, we want to hear that new information. We need that new information. But if you're all going to say the same thing, then I would ask that you consider not saying the same thing, just not getting up. Because hearing it over and over again, all that does is annoys more people and more people and more people. And sometimes you may not get the decision you want because you've just annoyed a lot of people. Think about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask that we also consider moving item 1 to the end of the agenda because we do have a lot of other things to deal with, and that way those people could leave. This is likely to be a lengthy item to deal with.
Okay. Members of council, your pleasure to that? You're fine with that?
Yep.
Everybody's fine with that? Okay, I don't require a motion. I just want your consensus on it. Okay. The last thing I'll say before we entertain this motion is that it is my intent to get through this meeting tonight. It's not my intent to defer it or to refer it. And if we're here till 5 o'clock in the morning, then so be it. Okay, my intent is to get through this meeting tonight and to make a decision. Okay, folks? So buckle up or relax. Popcorn's in the back. Help yourselves. Just kidding. But get comfortable, okay? Councillor Desmarais, we will do that, so I'm going to move on with the agenda. Members of council, to the vote, are there any further questions or comments to the motion that was put forward? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. I'm now going to move on to disclosures of interest. Actually, confirmation of the agenda. Members, now that the agenda has been amended, if we can confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Members, any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, items requiring a separate discussion, please. Councillor Kenny.
Item 2, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items 9 and 14.
Further items. Councillor Butters.
Well, I guess we better lift item 1.
Yes, that would be handy. Thank you, Councillor. Further items, members? With none, if I can ask a member of council to lift item 11. Councillor Steele, can you lift that, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's it. Okay, members, for those items not requiring a separate discussion this evening, if I can have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Elliott. Are there any questions or comments to those? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to Regional Councillors Report. Councillor Barrick, welcome. Waiting very patiently. David, welcome.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm going to appreciate, Mr. Mayor, you didn't give your report tonight. I seriously considered doing the same to save you folks. Got a long meeting, so I'll be very brief. The region overheard a couple of weeks ago the 2014 Region of Niagara Economic Development priorities for this year. We were also introduced to our new EDO, Bob Sagan, and we certainly recognize the competitive challenges here in Niagara, and we certainly recognize that we have to prioritize our existing resources. So with that said, we do have a plan that's been outlined for 2014. I do have additional information on each item, but I'm going to give a high-level overview for the sake of time this evening. And that is to revitalize Team Niagara by building on past efforts to create and sustain the Team Niagara approach with the region and municipal EDOs. To renew the CAO EDO, the CAO's Chief Administrative Officer and Economic Development Officer Working Group, by building upon last year's strategic discussions with a clear focus on joint priorities. and I would say no pun intended for the future discussion. Focus on investment growth by focusing our efforts to best utilize the region's resources, talents, and infrastructure, and to create new and expanded innovation and entrepreneurial initiatives. Again, by building upon existing regional, provincial, federal, nonprofit, and post-secondary efforts to expand innovation capacity within the region and entrepreneurial activities. So I'll leave it at that for this evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions as always.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Barrick. Members of Council, are there any questions for the Regional Councillor? Councillor Bodder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave, we spoke back in the fall time about trying to find Miller Street on the map. Haven't been able to do that yet, but on the corner of Miller Road and Doan's Ridge Road, the new sign still says Miller Street. I wonder if that might be amended somehow. It seems like quite a long time to get a sign change. So,
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bodner. I did bring that to the attention as per your request in the fall to the Commissioner of Public Works at the time. As you may recall, there have been some transition at the leadership team there. We do have a new commissioner, Ron Tripp. I'm happy to give him a friendly reminder as well. And also invite the mayor who sits on the Public Works Committee at the region as well. If he has an opportunity, together I think we can get that name change adjusted.
Thank you, Councillor. That's fine. Members of Council, any further questions to the Regional Councillor? With none, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Members of Council, we're now going to move on to Councillor's items, new business. Councillor's items, new business. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hansen. I believe it was about a year and a half ago when I requested, because I had a lot of questions about Kalali Street and Elizabeth Street and the process we were going to go through to discover whether it was worth putting a stop sign, a stoplight, something there. I'm getting more comments from more individuals. I don't remember seeing a report of any kind on that. And I was just wondering if it was close to coming to so we can give the citizens a response, or did it come through and I didn't see it? I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Doucette. We did prepare two reports on this intersection, Councillor Doucette, one in 2001 and another one in 2011. In the 2011 report recommended that no changes be made to the intersection. We did a complete analysis on it. We looked at the traffic accident reports and so on, and Council fully supported that request at the time, or the recommendation at the time, that no changes come forward. We weren't actually preparing anything else during this term of Council, unless Council's looking at some sort of reconsideration. That report was done and recommended that no changes be made to the intersection at the present time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. May I suggest that we do that? And the reason being is that there are more and more people talking to us about it. There is more traffic because of the valet center at the end of the road of Elizabeth Street. I'm getting more and more requests for police to monitor the speeding on Elizabeth Street from Colborne to Elizabeth. They seem to be taking a shortcut through Colborne to come up Elizabeth Street. So we need an adjustment to the report, or at least take another look at it. With the number of complaints that I'm receiving, I believe that needs to be done.
Thank you, Councillor. If I may, members of Council, what Councillor Doucette's asking for is a reconsideration. There was a report and a decision made by Council back in 2011, as Mr. Hansen alluded to. And so what I would request you do, Councillor, is to save that or hold it in abeyance until notice of motion, and then give notice that you're actually going to ask Council for 2/3 reconsideration, which is required. And then with that, then of course, if it's passed, a motion to bring a report back to Council to update the 2011 report for Kalali and Elizabeth Street, and then staff would then proceed accordingly. Thank you. Okay? Thank you, Councillor.
The second item is a ward meeting that we are having, that Councillor Desmarais and I are having on May 8th. We're going to be at Tim Hortons again. That seems to be the best place to go because we seem to be able to get more and more people coming there. It'll be May 8th at 7 p.m. Usually they save a little corner just for us. So please join us. Everyone in Ward 2, please join us. But Last time we had people from every ward there, and that was great too. So come on out, May 8th, 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson. Can you give us a status update on the condition of the sidewalk on Clarence Street that has been barricaded? I've had several questions from property owners and merchants downtown on what's happening and where we're going.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott. Yes, we can. There was a water leak to the CIBC bank building that had been ongoing for some time. That leak was secured last weekend, was repaired, and during the process of repairing, we did some test holes in a couple of the other areas and found that there's severe undermining of the sidewalk along the entire length from the CIBC building right to the corner of King Street. So we had two options that we were faced with last week in reviewing the condition of the sidewalk. One was to use some injection foam that we've used to raise sidewalk sections in places to fill in the gaps, and we secured a price for doing that. And as I said, it's quite an extensive repair that was required. There was an estimate of approximately $8,000 to do that work. Since we had our annual repair contractor coming in to start the concrete repair work that we do every year, we were able to secure a price at the same time from our repair contractor. It was almost the same price. It was $8,500 to completely remove that sidewalk, bring all the base back up to grade, repair the curbs that were damaged during the water main leak, and replace all the sidewalk with new concrete. So it was a fairly easy decision to proceed that way. So as of the end of last week, we were securing emergency locates for that section, and we're going to proceed with having CTC actually replace all that concrete. Hopefully there's going to be a start this week on securing, once we secure the locates.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
And one other question too. Since it seems to be centrally located from CIBC to the corner, have we any monies to do a study on the rest of the street? I know that there has been rumors that there's been leaky basements basically on Clarence Street from west to Elm Street in amongst several different blocks. Are we going to take a look at what's underneath the sidewalks on the rest of the street to see if we can prevent this from happening, or where we are in repair of the pipes underneath?
Mr. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that work has been done in the past year or two. We had some, if we go back 2 years, we had some severe flooding on Clarence Street, and that was a result of some of the storm sewers not being connected to the main trunk at King Street. It was also a result of some of the storm sewers being blocked. All that work, the correction of that work, condition of the storm sewers has been done. There's been clearing, interconnections made, and so that most of that work was done on the existing system. We're looking at going forward with replacement of the storm sewer, the full length from King Street right to Fielden, and we made actually application last year for funding under that current infrastructure program. Unfortunately, we weren't successful. There's about $2 million worth of work required on the storm sewer works along Clarence Street. So we're still looking for means to do that work, perhaps under the downtown CIP work where the design was actually completed. As far as undermining goes, we're not aware of any undermining. There's no signs of that occurring in the other areas. That was strictly a storm sewer drainage issue as opposed to a water main issue. So we're fairly confident that this is an isolated area in the area that we've just described where the sidewalks will be repaired.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. That's fine. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson again. I'm just touching base about an issue that we spoke about almost just a little over a year ago, I guess it was now. Colborne Street, the south side of Colborne Street, where at the end of Atho, there was an issue with with the sidewalk and a tree roots raising the sidewalk and some cracks along the sidewalk, and also pooling along where the street was meeting the driveway, the ends of the driveway, that sort of thing. Now, the last time I checked it, those hadn't been taken care of, and I was just wondering if you could give me some idea where we stand on that.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Desmarais. The tree in question at the address on Colborne Street, that's been removed. The stumping I talked to the roads foreman today, the stumping is being scheduled. The sidewalk, you're correct, it's been on the list for a couple of years now. So that's being looked at. The construction inspector was out today, and they're looking at that to ensure that that's on the 2014 repair list, and that contractor is starting within the next week or so. So hopefully that's going to take care of that issue on Colborne.
Councillor?
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Hansen. And also, just to add the pooling to that list, this would be a great opportunity to drive up and down that particular street and see where those issues are, because there are several along that street.
Thank you, Councillor.
But thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Any further new business, councillors' items? Members of staff, are there any updates? You good? You're all good? Donnie's giving you got an update, Donnie? You give me that look over there. Members, we're now going to move on to the minutes of the 8th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated March 24th, 2014, as well as the minutes of the 9th meeting special of Committee of the Whole, dated March 31st, 2014. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Doucette. Are there any questions or comments to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We're now going to move on to consideration of the items lifted. Councillor Demery, I'm assuming that you wanted to do all the items first before item 1? Yes. That's fine. Okay, so we'll start off with item 2. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves the encroachment request with the following conditions regarding 265 King Street. Insurance, $5 million coverage with city named as additional insured. Certificate within 30 days notice cancellation. Encroachment to be maintained with the fence concrete patio area. Tables and chairs to be seasonal, May the 1st to October 31st inclusive. Food trailer to be seasonal, May 1st to October 31st inclusive. Tents to be seasonal, May 1st to October 31st inclusive. Breezeway shelter to be seasonal, November 1st to April 30th. To be seasonal, November 1st to April 30th. Tables and chairs, food trailer, tents, breezeway, shelter, and to be temporarily removed upon 7 days' notice from the city for maintenance activities on the city's property. Food trailer to be inspected by the Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services prior to operation. Electrical Safety Authority inspection certificate and an inspection certificate from NSSA may also be required. Tents may require a building permit and are to also comply with the requirements contained in the entire fire code.
Thank you, Councillor. Give a seconder to that, please. Councillor Danch, questions or comments? Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really, I'm only pulling it because I'm concerned that we may have the wrong dates here in regards to the and the breezeway, because it says November 1st to April 30th, which is the winter months. And is that correct? I don't know if the proponents here are, I just want to know if that's correct, that it's for the winter months.
Thank you, Councillor, and I
That's all.
appreciate you lifting that. Mr. Eklund was here. Oh, come on up. I didn't see you back there. In a couple minutes?
Okay.
Okay, B, why don't
We'll
we
just leave it. That's
why
the
don't we
only,
just leave
that's the
this for
only
now?
question I had about it. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure before we pass it that we had the correct dates.
Okay, so let's
Is that
hold-
correct, Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Aquilina, go ahead.
Sorry.
Through Mr. Mayor, if council turns to page 138, the dates are provided by Mr. Eklund. So that is an error, Mrs. Kenny, Councillor Kenny, and that should be corrected. So good catch.
Okay, thank you, guys. But I still want to hold off until Kevin gets here, because he may want to speak on this report. So if we can just hold this until he gets back, we'll proceed with some of the other reports. It has been moved and seconded, but we'll just hold it in abeyance until Kevin gets back. That's great. Thank you, guys. Madam Clerk, you're okay with that? You're not going to kick me? Okay, we'll move on to item 9. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Community and Corporate Services, Community Services Division, report number 2014-5, subject 22nd Annual 444 International Walleye Tournament and 2nd Annual Budweiser Can-Am Fishing Derby, June 20th to 22nd, 2014. That the Council directs staff to waive the appropriate fees which has the least impact on the municipality. That includes waiving the Van Shell Park fees, supply and install the snow fence for the overall site that include the beer garden concession, RV camping parking zone, valued at $505, and offer reduced docking group rate of 35%, using an average boat length of 22 feet. In addition, issue the conditional permit for temporary parking, provide a letter of non-objection to the tournament's application for a special occasion permit, provide waste containers for the park, including regularly scheduled waste removal without incurring staff overtime and expenses, and further direct Community Partnership Coordinator to work with the organizing body to assist them to seek additional sponsorship and secure other resources of funding to help defray infrastructure and security costs valued at $4,370, and that council direct staff to provide access for the no-charge RV camping parking be permitted at H.H. Knoll Park Thursday, June 19th, 2014, starting at 12 noon.
Thank you. Councillor, do you have a seconder for this, please? Councillor Kenny, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just pulling forward some of the questions I have on this. But basically, the main point I'd like to make here is that I have talked to some of the people involved here, and it's been made very clear that they took the right steps to get this information and their needs to us in time for it to appear on our budget talks, but that for whatever reason that didn't end up happening. So they're coming to us with what might seem a late in the day request, but it truly is not. They're asking that we go back to the way we used to assist them and help them so that this $4,000 cost would not be sitting with them at all in its entirety. That we help them get sponsorship, and that we, barring their ability to get sponsorship, that we pick up the other costs. Making the case for that, I would like to say that we do have some money sitting there that we would have targeted for flavors, which would not be happening this year. We may be able to assist that way. But we should look at this as a major tourism event. This is something that does bring a lot of people into this community. We don't think twice about helping the sanctioned events through Canal Days because we know their importance. Well, this has the same kind of importance. It's a standalone event, and we should be assisting them. And I do agree, though, that we should help them grow to get their own sponsorship so that they can do this year after year without having to come to us. But they're in a position where they're kind of coming forward again after a year of change, and now they're going to need assistance to get up and going. And I would like us to consider going back to the way that we used to assist them and making sure that they're not left not being able to put on this great event because they don't have the money.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments to this report? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on the motion itself, should we, it says here that the camping right at the end, the camping parking be permitted at H.H. Knoll Park Thursday, June 19, 2004, starting at 12. Should we not also be putting an end date on that? And the reason for that is to make sure that everyone is aware that there is an end time in which they have to leave. And in the past, I believe we've done that, and it's just good housekeeping. So because there is no end date there, I don't know if the event itself on Sunday goes till 5 or 4. I don't know who can answer that, but if someone can answer that, maybe we can get that.
Mr. Hakeem.
Through your worship to Councillor Doucette, the end time is on Sunday, and I believe they have to vacate the park by 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That's what it is.
And then they'll pursue cleaning up and doing some of the other additional cleanup. That's a little bit more resourceful the next day.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support the City of Port Colborne sponsoring this event because I think at this stage of the game for this group to be able to make up that money is really not reasonable. Had this come before us at budget, as Councillor Desmarais said, we could have dealt with it then. But we have to deal with it now, and it's too important an event to let fall by the wayside.
Thank you. So, Councillor Desmarais, you had an intent there?
Well, I was, that's what I was just looking for right here. I would just ask that we deal with them in the same way that we always have, and that's we commit to making sure that their event happens by covering them, being a cover sponsor, and we're looking at a total of, I believe it's $4,370.
$4,875.
Sorry, $4,875, that's right. But that we actively seek sponsorship where
Okay,
possible.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Butters, you're seconding that?
Yes, I am.
Questions or comments to the motion? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support everything everybody said, but one thing I like in there is that our sponsorship coordinator, when she goes out to get sponsorships, it gets clawed back from that. Say she raises all $4,000, then it's not fair to, just load another $4,000 onto the Conservation Authority. So if we could claw back anything she gets, provided it doesn't cost the tournament anything, then we'd kind of do great. And plus maybe those sponsors would come on board for the next year also. So.
Okay, thank you, members. Now, before I go further, what I appreciate council doing is to deal with the first motion. I let it go, but they're contrary to each other. They're totally opposite. So to keep it clean, I would like to at least defeat the first one first, possibly. That's up to council. And then we can proceed with the new motion. So members, if you have no questions or comments to the original motion, I'll call for your pleasure to that motion. All those in favor? Pardon me? Sure, go ahead. That's fine. Well, what I'll do is I'll just add that to the next motion. Okay. Members, your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. Now we're going to go back to your motion, Ange. But the one thing I'd like to do is inject into that motion the first part of the past motion, because it is applicable. Okay, and it would be up to just the last paragraph will be eliminated, and then that would be where yours is injected into that motion. So, okay. So members of council, to that motion, Councillor Bodnar.
Mr. Mayor, are we sure? Are you talking about the recommendation? That's what we're going to take all of that?
That's right.
But in there it talks about only giving them 35% for dockage. Is that?
Hold on. Councillor Demeray, go ahead. It's your motion.
Councillor Bodnar would be correct. We would want to take that part out. So it would read that the council, get this a little larger here. The council directs staff to waive the appropriate fees. Let me see. And it would go down to, and instead of offer a reduced docking fee, it would be, and also provide docking fees. Yeah.
As per no fee.
Okay. As per, okay. Hang on a second here. No, that won't work either.
Councillor
Bonner, go ahead.
I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, if we do that, then that's going to change the $4,370. Somebody with more math skills than me is going to have to, figure this out. But we want it to be a net break even for the club. So whatever we got to do to get that, I think, is what we're going to have to do.
If I can jump in here, thank you, Councillor, and help out a bit. I think Councillor Demeray's intent here is to duplicate what we had provided last year in 2013. I'm sorry, the year before last. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Peter to comment both on that 2012 contribution as well as where this money is actually going to come from. So Peter?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the first thing is the in 2012 was the first year that actually the 444 came to the city looking for support, and the report was brought to council, and that was approved, and it was roughly about $3,000 to $3,500. As far as the reduced docking group rate, that is the normal, which is 35%, and that is what was provided in 2012 also. So if council's looking to keep the status quo, then that would be the reduced rate, and that is our discounted group rate that the marina normally has, is the 35%. Mr. Mayor, as far as the funding for this, what I can suggest is that Councillor Desmarais is correct that it was reduced out of the 2014 budget, so it is not in the 2014 budget. It was in the 2013 budget, and due to the fact that it did not take place and we were looking for savings for the budget, that was actually then reduced out of the budget in 2014. What I would suggest, what I can suggest to council is that because the funds were not spent in 2013, that if council so chooses, we can carry forward those funds from 2013 to cover the cost of the event in 2014, and then we'll bring to council in the 2015 budget as to whether or not council wants to continue to fund this event, or should it go to the hydro grant application process. So something for council to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Sinez. I think that's a great way to deal with it. So if we took the monies that had been allocated to it and not spent and applied them this year, and then see where we go from there, that would probably work for all involved.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar?
Sure. I guess the important thing is that we can do it tonight. If it goes to hydro, then, people have to make decisions, people that are coming. So whatever the cleanest way to do it is and the quickest is what we should be looking at.
Well, I think the intent here is, I'm going to come to you in a second, Peter. I think the intent here is to take the surplus that was actually accrued from the 2013 budget that wasn't used, roll it into 2014, and that'll do for this year. But I think as well, council may want to give some direction to the Conservation Club with respect to how to proceed in 2015 and beyond. They can do one or two. They have one or two options. They can come to council and ask for it through Harry to be in their budget, or they can actually, in my opinion, do it the most appropriate manner, which is to go to the hydro board for a grant. So with that, Peter, you have something else to add?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to add that I would suggest if up to the $3,500 for 2013, and unfortunately I would leave it to the Conservation Club to make up the difference, and we would also include working with our sponsorship coordinator to try to raise some funds so that it doesn't cost us $3,500.
Okay, Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's the best way to deal with it, but we do have some representatives of the Conservation Club here tonight, so they may want to speak to it, or we may have questions that I'm sure that they could answer.
Was there anything else that you folks wanted to add? Yeah, okay, so members of council, I need leave, please. Councillor Doucette, Bodnar, questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Motion to allow? Steele? Kenny, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Come on up. Press the gray button and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just a couple questions. Thank you for finding the money for us. We're greatly appreciative of that. Are you going to give us the $4,800? Or just what money you said was allocated for 2013?
Thank you. Before I go on, I need your name and your position.
I'm sorry. My name is Kathy McQuire, and I'm chairwoman for the 444.
There we go. Okay, Councillor Desmarais, that question is directed to you. It's your motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Kathy. I think what Mr. Sinez is suggesting makes the best sense for council this year. So it would be, I'm not sure the exact dollar figure, he can give you that, but it's what was allocated in 2013.
Thank you. Mr. Sinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we have is up to $3,500. Okay. And then if the Conservation can look at anything above that and coming up with their own funding sponsorship or funding activities. And then what we will also do is also instruct our sponsorship coordinator to try to help and work with you to see if we can reduce that cost.
Right. And as far as all the other stuff for the RV parking and the docks and all that is the same as what it was in 2012. Is that correct?
That's right. Mr. Sinez, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And I just want to clarify the percentage for the discount or the reduced rate for the Marina docks is the 35%, which is, I believe, what was provided in 2012.
With the cost of living and everything else going up, I'm not trying to be greedy here, but is there any chance we might be able to go 50% on the docks, and that would make up the difference of the money that we might be able to make up that we'd be paying you for docks?
Okay, that question will be more appropriate for members of council. So, Councillor Desmarais?
I can support that.
You can support that?
Yes, I could.
Okay, the seconder? That's fine, Barbara?
Yep. Thank you very much.
Members of council, questions or comments? Kathy, do you want to add anything else?
No, that's great. Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
support.
Kathy, and thank you, Peter, for your information. So just to be clear here, members of council, we do have a motion on the floor. It has been moved and seconded. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Butters, that council directs staff to waive the appropriate fees. The whole first part of the recommendation, Bob, can you get that recommendation up there, please?
I hope so.
And if you can, make it a little bit bigger.
Did you read that? I can read it.
Peter, Peter, I'm going to be coming to you just to get your thoughts together with respect to the actual total cost. Okay. Okay, so members of council, you can see the recommendation there. Obviously, the last part of the recommendation is being changed, and the original part is going to stay, which is the first paragraph, and well up to the last part of the paragraph. Okay, Peter, what is the total cost going to be with Councillor Desmarais' motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'd be difficult for me to determine what that additional 15% is because I don't have how many boats that they're bringing in and what the actual rates are at my hand. So I don't know what that additional. Basically, it's not an additional cost, but it's less revenue that we'll be bringing in. But as far as the motion goes, I believe the majority of the motion still stands, other than if council's looking to change the 35% to 50%. And at the end of the motion, it would be that the city would support up to $35,000 of $3,500. Sorry, you'd like that, wouldn't you?
Great prizes this year.
I know your heart was
great payout this year.
$3,500 up to $3,500 to be funded from the 2013 unspent
surplus.
Funds.
Great,
Yes.
thank you, Peter. That's fine. Councillor, that's fine. Question? Councillor Butters?
No, more of a comment. Apparently, I think it was Kathy was telling me a lot of the towns that host these kind of things, a lot of them actually provide dockage free of charge. So 50% is not an unreasonable position.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We're about $1,300 away from giving them what they asked for. And if we start playing with the percentage and everything else, why don't we just give them the $1,300 up front? I mean, bottom line is that would be better. At least I see it as less work for everybody. And I believe $1,300 can be found very easily. We can leave it in Peter's hands, and I know Peter always comes back with something in some way, shape, or form. But to turn around and to do the 15% and now we're playing with things. So,
Thank you, Councillor.
Just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to suggest, that we recommend the hydro as a possible avenue for finding a few more dollars. The applications, I believe, are due April 30th. So there's still time to get an application into the hydro and see what happens there. Nancy Giles can get you an application, and possibly there could be the extra monies found there.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions to the motion? Councillor Bodnar?
Just having spoken to members of the Conservation Club and they're doing their math, they would prefer getting the $1,300. And and leaving the docking at 35%. Have I got this right?
Okay.
Just saying what'll work for them, so.
That works, that's good.
Members, further questions or comments? We have the motion as presented, Councillor Desmarais, which is not the $1,300. So
We just have a different number. What number what motion,
Mr.
what did
Sinez?
we end up at, the numbers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The total cost that's in the recommendation is that the total cost is $4,370, and our budget is $3,500, so it's an $870
increase
difference.
But that does include the actual.
That doesn't include any change in the percentage of.
So what Councillor Bodnar is saying is put the 1,300, keep it at 35%, and the rest of the motion stands the same versus your motion, which is plus, well, 3,500 plus the 50%. So what we're doing is that either you're at 3,500 plus 50, or we're going to him at the full amount, but at 35.
I think I'm at an auction.
Okay? I feel like the auctioneer, never mind. So we have your motion right now, but if you want to change, you're the mover and you're the seconder, Councillor Butters. If you want to change to Councillor Bodnar's recommendation, then please do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely do. I think that what Councillor Bobby was saying makes good sense. We'll go with the full amount up front, and putting aside the docking fees, we're not going to deal with those. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion now moved by Councillor Desmarais and seconded by Councillor Butters, that we have the full first part of that motion, including the dockage rates at 35%, and at the full amount of $4,300. Okay, are there any questions or comments to that? Peter, you're clear on that? Councillor Doucette.
I've got a point of order here, and I think that the clerk is going to need us to make a decision here. We're going back to the original motion that we defeated, are we not?
No.
No? I mean, I support what it is that we're doing. I'm the one that brought, but at the same time,
if I can interject,
I want to make sure we don't gum it up. Let's put it that way.
The original motion actually called for the $4,300 to be passed on to our sponsorship department, and the possibility of fundraising for that $4,370. Actually, we weren't giving him anything but what was outlined in the first couple of paragraphs, including the RV, the rates at the marina, etc. The motion now outlines a $4,300 allocation. $4,300 allocation with the 35% rates at the marina, and everything else that stays the same in the motion. Okay? Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Bodnar, and then I'll go to Mr. Howell.
Councilor Desmarais, do we still have in there that our sponsorship coordinator will go out and try to get that, and we will claw back from the club? It's just trading dollars. Because I really think that if they get sponsorship this year, they might be able to keep them for next year, and we won't be going through that. So I'd like that part of the whole motion.
Okay. Mr. Howell.
Your Worship, on page number 208 of your agenda, there's a table that illustrates the cost, including our cost. It's a total of $4,370. Our cost of $505 for a total of $4,875. The motion that you see there should be $4,875, and everything else stays the same. That covers it all. And instead of to help defray, the city picks up that cost. That's the difference in the motion. The motion is presented changes so that instead of it defray it, it's paid for by the city in whatever way in the full amount of $4,875. Yes, and we're going to, yes.
So the 43 plus the 505 has been identified in the report? Okay, so the total is 4,875. Okay, it's just that it's separated in the report at 4,375 plus the 505. Everybody understands that? Madam Clerk, the most important thing is, do you understand that? You got it. We want to make sure that it's in the minutes properly. So with that, and members of council, as part of that recommendation, may I suggest that we add that the fundraising still be proceeded with, just to try and offset that cost, but as well that an application does or is made to the Hydro Corporation for the possibility of defraying some of that cost as well. Okay? Great. So with that, it has been moved and seconded. No further questions or comments. Members of staff, you're clear on this? All in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you, members. Thank you, guys.
Kevin's back.
Kevin's back. Kevin, we're going to move on to your report now. Councillor Kenny, I won't make you read it out again. For members of council, we are back to item 2, and this is the Department of Planning and Development report number 2014-4. The subject is encroachment request 265 King Street, which is the Smokin' Buddha. Councillor Kenny, you had a question.
Thank you, Worship. The question I had, I believe Mr. Aquilina can help me with that, because I looked on page 136 of the report, and I saw that same amount. But Mr. Aquilina, I was all in favor of what you're doing there. I think it's great. But I just want to know about the earth, because in our report, it said November 1st to April 30th. And I thought, are you having a party in the winter? Because point is going to be cold, but you never know. But I just questioned that in the report. And I understand from Mr. Aquilina that that's a mistake, but I'll let him speak to that.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Kenny, actually the information provided by Mr. Eklund is correct. The dates that he wants to have them are right in his letter, and I misread when I gave you that information, so Kevin can clarify. All the dates are correct.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Mr. Eklund?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, for a great city.
Now, did you have anything, first of all, to say in your report? You're good with it?
No.
Okay. The only clarification that we needed was Councillor Kenny had brought up the point about the air being, it says here in our report from November 1st to April 30th. And just to clarify your dates?
Yes. Yeah.
Are?
They would be November 30th through till April, March, mid-March or so, when the weather gets warmer. It's an insulated unit that I have, so it can be heated, but it's mainly for like right around the Christmas time for parties and that type of thing.
Great.
So it's a wind block, but it's insulated wind block.
Members of council, any further questions or comments to Mr. Eklund? Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did you get your kids in time?
Yeah.
Councillor Bodner.
This meeting goes past 1 o'clock. Can you run over some?
Yeah, sure.
If we order?
Consider it done.
Just wondering.
Thank you, Councillor. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Members of council to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you, members. And thanks, Kevin. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 11. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm raising item 11 for the mayor. Rosemary Armstrong of the Port Colborne Fair Trade Committee request regarding new city signs. Request the city to include fair trade city designation and/or the fair trade logo on the new city signs. That the correspondence received from Rosemary Armstrong on behalf of the Port Colborne Fair Trade Committee regarding new city signs, requesting the city to include fair trade city designation and/or the fair trade logo on the new city signs be referred to staff for review in respect of city policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Butters. Questions or comments to that? I just had two questions, or two reasons why I brought this up. One question. With respect to the signs, Mr. Hanson, we can expect this to come back to council in regard to the signs design and where they're going to go, so on and so forth?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. These decorative signs can have whatever council deems fit to see on the signs themselves. So the request for proposal is going out to the sign makers. We'll have some proposed sign designs on them, and then council can decide what they want to see on the decorative signs.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. So may I suggest, members of council, that we actually have an amendment, or a friendly amendment, I'll call it, to the recommendation that actually has staff come back with a report that actually outlines the exact locations as well as the designs of the sign, both just the city and designs with the Fair Trade logo on it. Is that fine, Ron? Would that be doable? That's fine. Members of council, are you fine with that? Everybody's good with that? Mover and seconder are fine with that? No further questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thanks, and thanks, Ron. We'll now move on to item 14. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cindy Forrester, MPP, Welland, read letter to the Minister of Natural Resources regarding a review of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, personnel issues, review of the NPCA mandate, and moratorium on current and future NPCA land acquisitions and disposals. That the correspondence received from Cindy Forrester, MPP, Welland, read letter to the Minister of Natural Resources regarding a review of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority personnel issues, review of the NPCA mandate and moratorium on current and future NPCA land acquisitions and disposals be received for information.
Thank you. Have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Danch, questions or comments to that? Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that this is an extremely important issue and that we need to do more than just receive this for information. I believe that as a council we need to support this and to circulate it to actually to the other municipalities in Niagara at the very least.
Pardon me?
The watershed municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And I do have a seconder to that. Now, members of council, and I agree with Councillor Demeray, this has been a sort of a hot button issue, especially at the regional level, with respect to the 3 points that the MPP Forrester brings up. And I would agree that we also add to the motion that we ask for the support of member municipalities, I'll use those words, of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, in particular the watershed. So with that, any further questions or comments? Well, this one's just to receive, so we can add to it to actually support, and of course move on to the watershed communities that are under the NPCA authority. Members of council, further questions or comments? Your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Demeray. Okay, that is it. Let's move on to item 1. If I can have a member of council bring item 1 forward, Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Planning and Development Report number 2014-23, subject recommendation report, zoning bylaw amendment, medical marijuana production facility. Recommendation is that Council of the City of Port Colborne approves the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix E to this report. 2, that the city clerk is hereby authorized and directed to proceed with the giving of notice of passing of the bylaw in accordance with the Planning Act. 3, that pursuant to the provisions of Section 34(17) of the Planning Act, no further notice of public meeting be required, and 4, that the city's site plan control bylaw be amended.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Bodner. Before I go to questions from members of council, as well as delegations that you've actually gave leave for, I'm going to ask Mr. Aquilina to present the report. Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report follows up on the public meeting that we had on March the 24th regarding medical marijuana production facilities in the city of Port Colborne. As council is aware, under the new federal regulations that came into effect April 1st, 2014, which you know that there's an injunction to allow current licensees to continue with personal medical marijuana production, but this application tonight deals with new commercial medical marijuana production facilities in the city of Port Colborne as a whole within the agricultural and rural zones of the city. There's no specific property that this report pertains to. It's a citywide amendment. The provisions that we have included in this amendment were 2 definitions that we have added. One was the definition of a medical marijuana production facility. The other definition we proposed was a sensitive land use. That sensitive land use would spell out what that means, and that would mean any residential home, a school, or a park. And the proposal that we have is that a medical marijuana production facility is recommended to be within the agricultural and rural zone, subject to a 150-meter setback from a sensitive land use. And we have also included other provisions that deal with interior side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, and the requirement of site plan control that would control the development of the property. And also the amendment would require a professional to conduct, if required, a study to determine any impacts on any adjacent well in the area, dealing with the groundwater impacts that it may provide or propose. We also control parking on the property, and we have control of any matter that would require screening if there is lighting over a certain percentage of the building face.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. And I sort of want to set the premise of the context of this discussion, because there's a lot of issues attached to that, which I'm sure you all have in your minds right now. But, and I'm going to do it through questioning the planner. Mr. Aquilina, the current operation that exists, what regulations or non-regulations are they under? And what I'm getting at is that there has been an opinion that it is in fact legal non-conforming. And with that, unless otherwise instructed by Health Canada, can operate under the former bylaw before amended, as we're going to do tonight. And of course, with that, has no regulations attached to it. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. It's determined to be a legal non-conforming use, having been in existence for quite some time. That gives it status. Right now, it is licensed under the former regulations, and so anything coming forward today has no impact as it is right now. However, once the new regulations kick in, one would need to comply with the provisions that are being proposed this evening to be considered a commercial medical marijuana production facility. This application has no regard or specifically towards any medical marijuana production facility that exists right now under the old regulations. So any facility that's within the city of Port Colborne could potentially be non-conforming. I believe the majority of the people that are here this evening are dealing with one property that would be considered a non-conforming property, and this bylaw proposal before council would not have any bearing to curb, stop, or regulate what is there right now. It's only for new.
Okay, just to be clear, however, that while the injunction is still in place, that this property or this operation will continue or can continue. It can continue under legal non-conforming. And with that, unless Health Canada instructs otherwise, they can't operate under the former bylaw. So this bylaw that we're dealing with tonight is only for new construction, because in fact, if or when the new regulations come forward, the commercial regulations come forward, can that operation still operate if they get a license under that building under legal non-conforming?
Mr. Mayor, if council this evening considers the bylaw before them, that would then set what the new regulations would be for new facilities. Right now, that use is considered non-conforming, and depending if they want to expand after council, if council deems this bylaw tonight, this evening, to be approved, they would be considered non-conforming. Any expansion then would require a committee of adjustment approval to expand that non-conforming use. If there is an expansion right now, let's say we get an expansion proposal tomorrow, this bylaw is not yet in effect, they would then fall under the current agricultural zoning provisions that we have right now in place.
Okay, so regardless of what regulations in place at the time with respect to the current under Health Canada, attaching the injunction to it, or the future with respect to a commercial grow-op, that current facility can still operate as is, legal non-conforming.
Mr. Mayor, under the current regulations that are in place, correct. If Health Canada does not grant a license for a new medical marijuana production as of April 1st, the regulations, so that operation would have to cease. It would not be allowed to continue.
But if they did allow a license, and this is what I want to be very clear on, because I don't want to give any false information out there or false hope. If in fact they were granted a commercial license, can they operate in that existing facility under the current bylaw? Question number one.
Yes, they could, Mr. Mayor.
So question number two, the new bylaw could not be enforced if in fact they were going to operate under that same roof that they have in place right now.
Correct, if Health Canada grants them a license.
Thank you. Members of council, I'm hoping you'll reserve your questions and or comments until after the presentations. I'm sure that was your intent, to listen and hear before we actually discuss. So with that, and we do have leave of council, and I do have a list here, and I'll be calling your name one by one. If you can, please, when you do get to the podium, if you can just state your name and your address, that would help our clerk out for the minutes, and we can proceed from there. You do have, under our procedural bylaw, 10 minutes to make presentation. And as Councillor Doucette alluded to earlier, if in fact we can keep it to new information only, we would very much appreciate it. Council has had the opportunity to hear you read from you throughout the past months. And by the way, I do thank you for taking the time and sending us a lot of the information that you sent to us. It was very helpful, still is helpful, from both sides. And we do appreciate that information. So if we can try and keep this to new information, we would very much appreciate that. If you have something to add, by all means, come on up, and we would appreciate that as well. So I'm going to start off with Dr. Peter Rothbart, who is the medical advisor for Mooleyboom Organics. Hold on. Hold on. I'm asking for Dr. Peter Rothbart. He's not here. Okay, we'll move on. If I can call upon Mr. Gilbert Sharp, who's a board member with Mooleyboom Organics. Not here. Now if I can call upon Mr. Mark Keeley, the board chair of Mooleyboom Organics.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mark Keeley. I'm the president and the chairman of the board of Mooleyboom Organics. I want to speak specifically to the decision you're going to make tonight. And I want to preface my remarks by talking about the, I'm going to just say the opportunity for Port Colborne to be part of a medical, I'm going to call it a revolution that's happening in Canada. If we look at, the changes from the access program under the MMAR to the marijuana for medical purposes regulations that the government of Canada had passed last June, I think we have a unique opportunity in Canada to look at processes and production facilities of a commercial nature that deem to help those who require medical marijuana under the current or the new regulations to get access to it in a safe and a secure environment. That is the entire rationale for why Mooleyboom Organics had decided a long time ago that we would invest and look at a particular site here in the city of Port Colborne. Let me speak specifically, Your Worship, through you to council on the site that's been under consideration here in this council for quite some time, and that is the Mooleyboom Farms on Pinecrest. I don't think, and I don't want to dwell on what I talked about last time, I don't think that anybody would argue that Mooleyboom Farms has a reputation that is stellar. And it's stellar for a number of reasons. Number one, it's master grower of whether it be agricultural products like cucumbers and tomatoes has been Peter Mooleyboom. Peter Mooleyboom for us is at Mooleyboom Organics has become a very specialized resource for us in the growing of a necessary medical product in the guise of medical marijuana. When we look at what's happening in this country with medical marijuana and its benefits and attributes to those who require it, this is not anything new. People for hundreds and hundreds of years, and not only the medical research, but the historic fact speaks to that medical marijuana is in effect a very important part of dealing with whether it be chronic pain, which is why Dr. Rothbart wanted to speak tonight. He's a noted expert in Canada on pain, or on the issue of health benefit for patients, which is what Gilbert Sharp would have talked about in the guise of public policy under health in this country. If I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, I could, and I don't want to address concerns of the public because I think it's important that the public understand and see that their voice needs to be heard about concerns. And when you look at this in the context of people looking at this at the dark side of marijuana, and there has been since that, like I said, treatment for addictions for those who require, I'm going to say, natural medicine in the guise of plants. I think it's important that we look at what Health Canada has done. Health Canada, if you look at its site, has listed several, almost 30 different ailments that can be treated by medical marijuana. I don't want to dwell on the dark side of this because I think those concerns need to be assuaged, and we're in a process of doing this. When I spoke with some of your council members, Your Worship, on your council, we had come up with some specific opportunities to address those concerns. My role at Moolboom is specifically as its president. We have those who are working with us, who are engaged with us on issues like public engagement, community relations, et cetera, et cetera. And we want to make sure, as I talked about with several of your councillors, Mr. Mayor, through you, if we have to strike issues like a liaison committee to make sure that those public issues of people are addressed and frankly, Your Worship, through you to your council, mitigated to their satisfaction. I see us being put in a place or position to actually provide that kind of leadership for this council, and we're very much prepared to do that. When I talked to you at the last, at your public meeting, and when I spoke to several of your council members, Mr. Mayor and yourself, including your CAO, we said we are prepared to be compliant. We are prepared to work with this council to do this. I want to make this fundamental difference between what I'm hearing here tonight and the decision that you have to make as a council. We are not looking to expand this facility. We are looking to move it to be compliant to what you want to do on your regulation. Point final. That is our goal. We have said right from the start that we want to work with you. We have said from the start that this is an organization whose product will benefit people who have health issues in this country. And the fact that our particular business model centers around the idea that we will be an agricultural facility. We will be an agricultural facility who will grow a product that is health-related in nature. And for that, sir, Mr. Mayor, to your council, we're hoping to catch up on that idea that the plants that we will grow will be beneficial to the patients who will use them. Now let me address the issue of the setback. As I said, I don't want to leave you with the opinion that we are looking to expand. This is an agricultural facility. These greenhouses, under what Mr. Aquilina has proposed in the regulations, if we are to be compliant, will need to be moved. We're very prepared to do that, and we're very prepared to do that with your help. We have spoken with your planning department, and we're working right now very closely with them to address issues and concerns, and we're very happy to look at issues that will assuage your fears as a council. As I said, we want to comply, and I'm very happy, Your Worship, to answer any questions or comments that your council may have.
Thank you. Members of council, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Bodnar.
Mr. Mayor, it was suggested that we wait till the end to do questions. Is that still
I would suggest that if you have questions to the presenters, that we take care of those questions as they present. Otherwise, we're going to have people coming back and forth, back and forth. So let's deal with the questions to the presenters as they present. Councillor Bodnar?
Sure. All right. Not having heard all the other speakers tonight, certainly I appreciate the fact that you've said that, you know, you're willing to work with the community and engage the community in a dialogue that can alleviate some fears.
Yes.
Right. And I must tell you from my point of view, and I'll let councillors speak for themselves, but certainly one of the reasons I would suspect you're on agricultural land is that it is certainly a tax advantage, for one thing. Not taking away from Peter's expertise, because I've been fortunate enough to deal with Peter for a lot of years, but there certainly is a large tax advantage that, you know, will allow you to keep your costs down. I guess that's in the competitive market, you know, a good thing. If you were to move to an industrial zone, you would have to pay some more taxes, I'm sure. And I'll just give you a heads up that it certainly would be my thought process that as you go along, that this council should investigate something that like is done to the wineries by MPAC, where they've reassessed certain areas that agriculture is one thing, but the other areas could be reassessed and taxed as industrial. I don't know what that would look like in the grand scheme of things, but I will tell you that certainly myself and Councillor Butters, I think, will be looking to investigate how this will all roll out if this indeed moves ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Keeley. I have one of my questions concerns what you talked about the liaison committee process, and so I'm wondering if you could talk to us about what you see as a time frame. Some of the information that I've been receiving from neighbors is that, you know, they feel like out of that loop, and they don't feel like there's been an opportunity for good information to go back and forth in a more personal setting, I suppose. So could you speak to a time frame for that, maybe open house or tours, etc.?
Thank you, Councillor.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Councillor Butters, I would say this at the outset, and I want to, maybe I apologize. I think Mooloboom Organics is committed to being a part of this community. We have invested in Mooloboom Farms, and we've invested in a long-range planning process that includes exactly what you're saying, community relations. So I guess the short answer would be we would move immediately, and I would like to work with you, as we discussed previously, on establishing some kind of a local liaison. And that would include things, if it's necessary, to have us do tours of the facility and talk about our aspirations for, and almost in a community awareness light, to offer up opportunities to see what our plans are for the future. Very happy to do that and work with you in the immediate short term.
Councillor?
Could you give me more, like, are you talking like the next 30 days or the next 45 days or the next 60 days?
I would say in the next 30 days, Councillor Butters.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments to the presenter? With none, Mr. Keeley, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm now going to call upon Mr. Tom Schroeder. Tom Schroeder. And Sue Schroeder. You must be Sue. You're definitely not Tom. Ms. Schroeder, welcome.
Thank you. Sue Schroeder here, 2407 Fire Lane 2. I'm speaking for my husband, who's unable to be here. We came for summers to Port Colborne for over 15 years, and now as retirees, we live here year-round. We love Port Colborne. It's a mystery to us, however, why we don't take this opportunity to restore Port Colborne to prosperity by having industrial tax revenue 93% greater than agricultural zoning revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aquilina, if you can touch on that with respect to the, I guess, desire, for lack of a better word, for the members of the public as well as even some members of the council to try and direct, I use that word, this operation to industrial versus agricultural?
Mr. Mayor, through you, a report was previously submitted to council for information purposes. There are two factors here. Number one, before you this evening, is to permit these within agricultural areas. Second to that report was to then consider this to be permitted within the industrial areas of the city as well. That would require an official plan amendment as well. However, right now, agricultural does not require the official plan amendment. We consider it to be an agricultural use, and that is why you only have the rezoning application for agricultural zone provisions only.
So if I may, Mr. Aquilina and Mr. Howe, you might want to pipe into this one as well from the legal standpoint. Are we as a council able to actually direct this use to industrial property versus agricultural property?
Mr. Mayor, the opinion from legal counsel and staff is it is an agricultural use, period. However, we could consider it as well to be an industrial use.
My question, however, is does this council have the authority to direct it to industrial versus agricultural?
Mr. Mayor, it's considered to be an agricultural use.
Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, the provisions of the Planning Act are pretty difficult, and the opinions that we got from not one, but right now 4 lawyers to agricultural, the only way you could force it would be to prohibit it in the agricultural zone, and that is contestable. And the opinions that we have, that we face right now, is that it is agricultural. The only way that you could entice it would be through agreement, or I can't say it, but some kind of incentive, which is currently not permitted in the legislation. So the answer, Your Worship, is no.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. If I can now call on Carrie Fallon. Carrie? Carrie, I have to admire your tenacity. You were ready to go to last report. And by all means, I was prepared to get you up here to speak on it.
Right out of the gates. Isn't Fort Erie running this year? So.
Pardon me?
Isn't Fort Erie running this year?
Yeah. Carrie, welcome.
Sorry to jump the gun there.
No problem. No problem.
Mr. Mayor, council members. Just give me a moment here. We got a few things. I'll try to keep it short, as Council Member Doucette said. I'll just begin by, I just assume, and everybody's been out to see the site there of the greenhouses. I see some nods. Yeah, good. Site plans. No, that's good. So you see where we're talking about. Now, if this amendment were to go through, they can expand up to 5 acres or 2 hectares. Just bring that back to reality. How much is 5 acres? Well, if you take this City Hall, the block around here, Councilmember Steele's office back there, not just that, that's big enough, right? Go across the road, take that whole block, the Market Square, CIBC, all that area, the church, that's 5 acres. And why wouldn't you? Mr. Keeley mentioned for Millboom Organics a couple weeks ago in the last meeting that, what are they going to produce? 1,500 kilograms? We heard in a news release, that's up, I guess they changed their business plan a little bit, but now it's 4,500 kilograms. Do the math on that, it's $1 a gram. Geez, that's about 1.5 million for the first. That's quite a lot. So I, as a business person, would expand 5 acres, no problem. Right here, has anybody seen the acts? This is the MMPR Act, Marijuana for Medical Purpose Regulations. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but it's pretty thick. It makes, does make reference to the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act as well. Now in these acts, I don't know about anybody here, but I haven't seen anything that's referenced for zoning. Location of one of these medical marijuana places, the site, the size, anything. In fact, the only thing that really references it is, and I'm making this stuff up, a site means a building or a place in a building used by a licensed producer, or an area occupied exclusively by buildings used by a licensed producer. So it says buildings. I don't see agriculture on there. Building seems to me more commercial, industrial sites. What is it? It's referred to in all these acts. And actually, I should go back a little bit. The location, as recorded in the Planning Department report here, it's noted there as well that there are no specific regulations to specify where they can be located, setback or parking requirements, and servicing or size requirements. So that was noted in the planning, with the Planning Department in their actual plan. So Health Canada is saying there is no site plan, it's open book. Do we understand that? Very good. So what happens with reference to agriculture use? I get a lot of acts here that the ministry goes under, and I don't see any part of this act that refers to any food agriculture use. In fact, I see, what do I see? Under controlled, it's a controlled substance. Under the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, yeah, it's a controlled substance. Again, it's right from here. Description of a controlled substance. Right here, a lot of derivatives of cannabis, but I don't see anything related to food. Nothing's mentioned about agriculture crops there. Right there. So, I don't know, your legal says, legal counsel determined that a medical marijuana production facility is in agriculture use. So what's agriculture use? All right, we're going to go here. Agriculture use means a use of land, building or structure for the purpose of animal husbandry, keeping of livestock, beekeeping, dairying, fallow, field crops, forestry, fruit farming, horticulture, market gardening, pasteurizing, and blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing about. It includes the growing, raising, packing, treating, storing, and sale of produce and other similar uses customary carried on in the field of general agriculture and which are not obnoxious. The opinion of legal counsel can be interpreted as agriculture use. I don't see agriculture use in these acts. I don't know where the legal is coming from, but we don't see it. I don't see anything mentioned in these acts whatsoever. It's mentioned under another one, which is referenced, narcotic control regulations. It is a narcotic in this description. Dealer's license. No licensed dealer shall import or export a narcotic without a permit. A licensed dealer is authorized to have a narcotic in their possession for the purpose of exporting the narcotic from Canada. So it's all referenced, narcotic. There's nothing about food, agriculture use. So where the legal is coming from, I really don't know where they're getting their information, but as far as the acts go, I do not see it there. So these are letters right from Dr. Prue, or Mr. Prue. He's the medical marijuana director at one time. August 20th, like I said before, it's will be applicable provincial municipal legislation and regulations, including zone restrictions, but they are to comply with your municipal zoning bylaws. That was August 20th. September 20th, 30th, he said the same thing. Let's go to October. The federal government has stated that all licensed producers must comply with all municipal laws and bylaws, including municipal bylaws, zoning bylaws. So in other words, yes, it's an open book, right? The chapter hasn't been written yet. It's in your hands. Health Canada is saying it's in your hands. It's not in Health Canada's hands. You can make any decision you want. You can amend any zoning amendments that you want to put on paper. That's in your hands. Mr. Mayor, I know I've attended one too many sessions here, but you speak highly of Port Colborne. Council members are doing a great job. You talk about the gateway to one of the wonders down the lane here, down the Niagara River. It's a gateway to the largest fresh body of water in the world. So is this going to be the gateway of the next commercial marijuana production? I don't know. It's your due diligence right now, so I would advise you to take a deep breath. If it's all night, I'm not sure. Mayor Vance, I don't want you to stay all night, and council members, but so be it. Take a breath. Take a little bit of time to digest what's in the act, what your legal is telling you, and what you can do, because you can do anything. If you want it in this agriculture land, which I suppose you could do that, but with all your zoning amendments, it doesn't have to be an agricultural land. It can be in commercial, industrial sites right off the bat. Mr. Scott has lots of feedback with other communities. He referenced a lot in BC out east, and hopefully he can speak tonight on those. So, those municipalities have rezoned. A lot of them have gone to industrial. So guess it's in your hands right now.
Thank
So
you,
make a
Kerry.
good choice, make a good decision. Our people here in Port Colborne, the community themselves, I know we are proud to be in Port Colborne. We live in Port Colborne, we breathe Port Colborne. It's fortunate enough that we do live where we do. It's great, as Sue pointed out. So all I would say is that I'm not sure if the board members of Milliboom Organics reside in Port Colborne, but we do. We live here. It's our community. We're trying to do the best that's best for the city and best for the citizens. So again, you're in council. You make up your mind. I'm not sure about your legal there, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kerry. Before you leave, members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary, for your thoughts on this. And I see you got a lot of paper there, and you've gone through a lot of things. I was with you at a meeting in the Edwards House one Sunday afternoon. I suggested that maybe you should consult a lawyer and a planner that specializes in this to get opinions backed up that you've come forward with. I just wondered whether you had done that to support these opinions.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Fallon.
Member Bonner, it was talked about, but that would be the next step involved, but to consult a lawyer as well.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina, with respect to some of the comments that were made, some of the questions that were asked, if you wanted to give any comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to repeat myself, legal counsel has stated, and I support, that this use is indeed in an agricultural zone. It's an agricultural use. If you look at the definition of agriculture, if you look at our official plan policies, the cultivation, the growing of crops, whether it be tobacco, ginseng, you name it, it's considered to be greenhousing. It is permitted in the agricultural zone. What's taking place in other municipalities across the country, my understanding is that those municipalities, if you take British Columbia, I know there's some discussion about what's taking place out there, those decisions have been made by council, but under their government framework, it needs approval from the ministry, the provincial government, and they have not given that. So municipalities, as was stated by our legal counsel, the city cannot prohibit, we can only regulate. The zoning bylaw gives you the regulation provisions to actually try to control and direct where the municipality these could be constructed.
So just to clarify, again, I want to be very clear for those that are on the gallery. And I mentioned earlier the current operation, which this does not attach itself to. So we're going to park that over here because there's, quite frankly, because it's non-conforming and because Health Canada hasn't come up with any regulations to that, that's operating. There's nothing that we can do about that. There's no regulations we can attach to that. It's under injunction right now, as well as it's under legal non-conforming.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. The operation license is 4.
Okay,
that's
so,
the maximum.
So that's parked. So with what we're attaching ourselves to here with respect to this zoning bylaw amendment is a future operation, and and possibly even expansion. Quite frankly, if it had to go to the committee of adjustment. And this new bylaw would regulate the future operation, new building, such as setbacks and things of that nature.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So that's the control we have.
Correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear about that, because I keep hearing, and I have heard in the past, that this is council's decision. We can do whatever we want. And we wish that was the case. But unfortunately, as you stated, that's not the case. All we can do is regulate, especially as it relates to setbacks and things of that nature. Mr. Aquilina, you also made the comment that this is an accepted agricultural use. My question to you is, how come it's not identified within the Act?
Mr. Mayor, under the Planning Act?
No, under the Act that Mr. Fallon actually identified, which is the Act actually regulating this use.
Mr. Mayor, they then state that it's up to the municipality to control where they want to locate these. The Act doesn't really give much information. Just indicates that the individual needs to give notice to the municipality. There's nothing written right in the Act. Under their general guidelines, they say that it should respect the local decisions with respect to zoning. Nothing's right in the regulations that say it must be an agricultural use. It doesn't say it has to be under the zoning bylaw. It just gives direction that the individual needs to contact the municipality, and under the guidelines, there is an assumption that it needs to honor and respect the local decisions of council.
So basically, it's relying on the Planning Act.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through Section 34.
Okay, so under Section 34 of the Planning Act, it does actually offer support of this being an agricultural use, correct?
Mr. Mayor, it doesn't say specifically under Section 34 this is an agricultural use. Section 34 of the Planning Act just deals with zoning bylaws.
Okay, so where does it actually identify under the Planning Act that it's an agricultural use?
It's not, Mr. Mayor. It's not under the Planning Act. It's under Section 34, which then gives the municipality powers under Section 34 of the Planning Act to regulate and decide what are the land uses you want within the municipality, whether it be residential, commercial, institutional, industrial. So municipality then can control through the Planning Act, Section 34, which you have this evening. It's a Section 34 decision to be made.
Right, and that's going to identify it under the agricultural zoning, correct?
Correct.
Which is what we're doing here.
Correct.
However, take a step back. What actually, under whatever act, whether it be the Planning Act or identify this use as an agricultural use?
Mr. Mayor, it's the interpretation of what your zoning bylaw defines agricultural. It's what your policies with respect to the agricultural designation state.
Mm-hmm. So does council actually have control to change that?
Mr. Mayor, an agricultural, by its nature, it's pretty common folk what that is. Your zoning bylaw follows every other municipality. Give or take, the odd word here or there is mixed, but agriculture is agriculture.
Now, if council was to change that, what can happen?
Mr. Mayor, you can be challenged if someone is to, if you're going to make that change and there's an appeal, it would then go to the Ontario Municipal Board. It would be hard pressed, depending on what council does decide, hard pressed that the Ontario Municipal Board is going to cite something different that the practice throughout the province of Ontario, which regulates in other jurisdictions what agricultural is, to then do something that's not of the norm.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Butters?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. I think one of the confusions is that that in Ontario, there's other municipalities that are doing something different than we are, or what is proposed here, and there's municipalities that are doing similar. So when you're in the province of Ontario, and we're under those rules, and I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from. Ottawa is doing what they're doing. Toronto's doing what they're doing. Lincoln or West Lincoln is doing what they're doing. There doesn't seem to be like a consistency. Can you comment to that inconsistency?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor, a lot of municipalities may have different input, different planning perspectives, different legal opinions per se. Each municipality is different. When you talk about what is agricultural, a lot of municipalities have that same feeling. There might be some municipalities, for whatever reason, don't want this in the agricultural area. If there is a challenge, my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe our legal counsel has advised that if one is to challenge that, it would have to be considered within the agricultural area. It'd be very difficult to then make a justification or an argument as to why it shouldn't be.
Thank you. Any further questions to Mr. Fallon or comments relative to his presentation? With none, thank you. Mr. Fallon, thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Kathy Kalniuk. Is Kathy here? Kathy, come on down. Did I pronounce your last name properly? Kalniuk? Kalniuk? It's actually his name?
Yeah.
Kathy, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything formally prepared. We live at 851 Pinecrest, by the way, which is not in the heart of the zone that is directly affected by the current grow operation. But we're not talking about anything, any area in particular tonight. But as for my husband and myself, we became involved in what was going on because we wanted to become informed on the issues. And so we became involved and we've attended the meetings, and we just feel that this is a operation that belongs to be located in an industrial area. It does not belong in, should not be operated in a agricultural area, and it should be zoned and taxed industrial. End of discussion.
Great, thank you. Mr. Howe, with respect, we heard from Mr. Aquilina about the zoning. With respect to the taxation, if you can give some comment on that.
Your worship, greenhouse and growing is agricultural. Agricultural products, if they're registered with the Farm Practices Board in Guelph, will only pay 25% of the residential tax rate. Greenhouses, and we had it confirmed today from MPAC, this would be assessed agriculturally. If it was located in an industrial park, it still will be assessed agriculturally, according to Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Councillor Bodner indicated there may be pieces of it that might be zoned industrial for processing, perhaps in a flour producing or egg packaging. But the fact is that the majority of the growing area is greenhouse, and it, according to MPAC, will be zoned and taxed, will be taxed as a farm operation. I am not sure, Your Worship, whether or not they would qualify for a 25% tax rate. The legislation right now requires annual income in excess, I believe, of $7,500. Correct me, Mr. Chair, is it 75 or 9,000? $7,500. If a farmer produces $7,500 or more from the farm, then they're entitled to have a tax rate of 25% of the residential rate, which is the lowest of the tax rates. If this fits in that same definition, and I'm not sure that it does, they will be entitled to that same rate, 25% of the residential tax rate. But failing the worst, it would be at least the residential rate. Right now, the impact information we got today is pretty clear. It would be taxed and considered agricultural, and that's how it would be taxed. And Mr. Sinez may have more.
Mr. Sinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In addition to what Mr. Howell was saying, is MPAC has also informed us that they would have to also go out and do a review of any particular properties to see what the process is, what's happening, in order for them to determine whether or not there is any split between agricultural and industrial. And those are the only tax classes at this point in time, unless the government decides that they're going to provide an additional tax class for this type of operation, which is that the province could, the minister could determine that. The other thing is the OMAFRA is also the body that determines whether or not certain properties are approved for the farm tax rates.
Great, thank you. Any further questions or comments to the presenter? With none, we'll now call upon our next presenter, Mr. Donnie Edwards. Donnie, you want to come on up? You're good? John Ressler? Good. Pauline Ressler? Good. Peggy Zazaretto? Peggy's not here? Okay. Pat Leckie? We're fine. Leslie Krieger? Okay. Drew Bell? Drew Bell? No? Nancy Meisner? Nancy, come on up. I think I've known you. I feel like I've known you for ages. The amount of emails I've received, the amount of emails I've received from you in the last month, we're like related now. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions about the proposed bylaws. One concern I have is if agricultural land is abutting residential land, are the setbacks different for residential land if I wanted to put a shed, for instance, next to, in a residential zone?
Okay.
Is it different than agricultural? Because according to what I understand, it's building to building on this proposal, 150 meters, approximately 450 feet. And my yard is like this. This is the shape of it. Bear with me. Here's the laneway. Here's my house at the front. I have a good 500 plus feet of setback. If it's building to building, does that mean a building to grow can be there?
I understand.
Even though I'm zoned residential, so I don't understand why it's not building to property line.
Yeah, let's get an answer for you. Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, through you, just back to Ms. Meisner, question about setbacks for accessory buildings in the agricultural zone. Our zoning bylaw for those requires a 15-meter setback from the front lot line, 7.5 meters to the side lot line, and 23 meters for agricultural buildings and structures from the interior side lot line. The regulation that we are imposing is the setback from the actual operation, the medical marijuana production facility, 150 meters away from the actual sensitive land use, which would be a single detached dwelling. Right now we are following with what minimum distance separation formula requirements are under OMAFRA for that setback provision, and that's what we are applying for this bylaw.
And that's from the building to my house?
From the building, if you have...
Building to building? Yeah.
A building that is being proposed needs to be 150 meters away from the actual single detached dwelling on the adjacent property.
So our question, Mr. Aquilina, is that it's building to building then. It's not from building to property line.
Correct, building to building.
So basically she won't be 500 plus the 150 away. She'll be actually, it's building to building. So that 150 can actually be closer to her property because it doesn't take into consideration the 500 meters.
Correct,
Meters?
Mr. Mayor.
Did you say meters? Or feet?
Well, 500 feet, the depth of my yard is in fact providing the setback.
That's right.
So I can't really enjoy that part of my property, given that that's...
And that's a great question, Nancy, because at the end of the day, what if you were to put another building in the back of your property?
Yeah.
Dan?
Mr. Mayor, through you,
I'm thinking of it.
the setback provisions are in place as well. You have the 150-meter separation distance, but also you have additional setbacks that would need to be complied with for a medical marijuana production facility, and those would be 30 meters away from the front lot line and a 15-meter interior side yard, which would be along your property line and the lot that would have the medical marijuana facility. It would also need to be 15 meters away from your property line.
So another 45 feet.
Correct.
So that'd be 45 feet setback then from the back of my lot.
Correct. Through Mr. Mayor.
That's all. I have a question too about the taxation, if I could. We're talking, Mr. Heil, you were saying if you took a greenhouse and placed it in an industrial area, because it's a greenhouse, they would still be taxed as agricultural. Is that correct?
Here, Your Worship, it is the use of the property that determines the taxation zone.
I believe, and actually, I was talking to the mayor of Lincoln the other day, and I believe they currently have an operation in Lincoln that's under that impact assessment, an agricultural use in an industrial zone.
So it doesn't have to be a greenhouse. It's the use.
Mr. Howell?
Your Worship, it is the use, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And can anybody tell me what the proposed new building plan is for? I know we're talking about the whole city here. I wouldn't want anybody in the city to be going through what we're going through. There's lots of other property, that farm property that abuts residential around this city. what is the proposed building that's going to be? You're not going to expand, you're going to build, is what Mr. Keeley said to us a few minutes ago, that you would not be expanding, you would be building new. And I'm just wondering where that would be placed, since my property, I know this is getting personal again, but it's at that back corner of the
Right.
L of that property where I'm questioning 45 feet setback for me using my property.
That actually begs two questions. First question is your question with respect to, has anything been submitted yet, Mr. Aquilina, with respect to a future building?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, we have not received anything.
And the second question I would ask, and Mr. Keeley, I hope you forgive me for asking this question, but I have to ask it because it's relevant, is with respect to the application that you made to the federal government. Has there been any response to your application as of today or as of this date? Has there been any response to the application that you've made? There has been a response? Pardon me?
Yes, there has been.
Would you mind if I asked where it's sitting right now?
It's under review.
It's under review. Okay, so there hasn't been a decision on your application yet. Okay, so when is your intent to actually submit your plans for the site?
As soon as we hear it.
As soon as you hear. Okay, thank you. Nancy, go ahead.
So we can't know, if we're going to have a liaison committee, are we not going to know what they are proposing should the license come through? They must have a plan, I would think. You have a business plan.
Mr. Aquilina, if you can go through the protocol of the development application.
Mr. Mayor, if council approves the recommendation this evening, but also would be approving an amendment to the site plan control bylaw.
Right.
One needs to submit an actual site plan control application that is complete with property information, the lot size, where on the property the facility is going to be located with respect to the front yard setback, rear yard setback, interior side yard setback, front yard setback, where is the parking on the property going to be located, how is the access drive going to be controlled, is there any sort of septic system, any sort of water that is required, where is that going to be located? It's the whole picture that's going to be submitted that will show us all of those details, and the size of the property as well as then the size of the building importantly as well too. Once we receive an application, Mr. Mayor, we circulate that. Council has given myself the authority to approve a site plan agreement. It does need to be confirmed and approved by City Council. There is no circulation process that is in place to notify the neighbors.
When would it be appropriate for the council to recommend a PLC put in place?
Mr. Mayor, that is the discretion of council to actually create a policy that would have regards to any medical marijuana production facility that would require, as part of the process, a public liaison committee.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councilor Butters?
Would it be appropriate at this time, Your Worship, to put that kind of a policy or in place that we would make that a requirement?
Okay, if we can wait for that, Councilor, until we put the ultimate motion forward versus having a whole bunch of motions put forward, if you just want to mark that down and make that as part of the motion. Go ahead, Councilor.
My other question is, so is there anybody from Colborne Organics that is able to answer Nancy's question of what this facility is to look like and some at least rough idea on the property where you're thinking about locating it, and it doesn't hold you to anything, it doesn't say that's, you know, exactly how it's going to be, but just in some kind of general form? Could you answer that?
If I may, Councilor, if I may, I think with all due respect to the protocols and the processes, and I think Mr. Keeley already made the comment earlier that he was going to be looking at abiding by the setbacks and everything as outlined in the bylaw that we're entertaining today. That's secondary. I think what's primary is to abide by the proper protocols as outlined by Dan under the Planning Act, whereby the application will be made. Those specifics of the application will be identified. The public will be notified and, of course, have the opportunity to give comment on the entire site plan. Correct, Mr. Aquilina? Correct. And then, of course, with that, and hence the reason why I also suggested that as part of the recommendation, a public liaison committee would be established so that, therefore, you can walk through the process before council actually makes the ultimate decision. But I just think it's challenging today for two reasons. To ask questions to the proponent and or even the public, proponent in terms of what their intentions are, and the public in terms of what their expectations are, when we simply don't have anything formalized right now. Because those things can change. And I do not, absolutely do not want people walking out of this chamber this evening with any false hope, false thoughts, or any misguided information. My intent this evening, folks, is to have everybody very much understand the realities of what we're dealing with. Whether you like it or not, it is what it is, and we have to deal with that. If we had, as Mr. Fallon said, 100% control, this would be a heck of a lot easier. But unfortunately, we don't have that. Point number 2 is, rest assured, a lot of the information that we do learn here about this evening, it's not going to just end here. Because the federal government has sort of dumped this on us to some extent with respect to only allowing us under the Planning Act to deal with this issue, rest assured we're still going to make comment on your behalf and even on the proponent's behalf, on both your behalves, in terms of what our concerns are with respect to this regulation legislation. And what I mean by that is concerns with respect to, is it commercial or industrial? Concerns with respect to the actual use of it. And the list goes on from what we've learned throughout the past month and a half from emails we got from both sides. So it's not going to end here. As a matter of fact, we're going to recommend to the province that they actually take it a step further, as was mentioned earlier, to do a study on some of those implications versus dumping it on us with very little information and very little implications of what this may do in any part or any zoning throughout the municipality. So I wanted to make that comment because it doesn't end here. Okay, it does not end here, and that's to the benefit of both sides. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and I think that's very important to understand. So going back to Councillor Butters, I think that has to be walked through, but to simply go back and forth this evening, I just don't think it's fair to the process, and it may give false impression to the initiative or this initiative and or subject that we're discussing this evening.
Could I ask one more question about procedure?
Nancy, if I can first,
no.
With all due respect to Councillor. Councillor, are you all right?
Well, the reason I asked it was because some of the emails that I've received, and maybe the rest of you have noticed, is that some folks have made comment to the fact that they have visions of this looking like, you know, a Fort Knox or a penitentiary or some kind of.
To make a motion that includes a change as you were doing with the fishing derby, or is it yes or no to that absolute document that has been put forward by the planning department?
Mr. Howe?
Your worship, the legislation requires a bylaw is presented. If there's an amendment to the bylaw, it must go back, rewritten, and then re-presented to council. Motions are fine, policies are fine, your worship, but if it's a bylaw, it is required to be referred back. That's why the clerk will pull bylaws if council wants any changes to the bylaws. If you make any changes in the bylaw, it goes back, and then it comes back to another meeting and gets a delay.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate your time. If I can now call upon Jim Leckie. Am I saying that right, Leckie? Leckie? Jim? Okay. Thank you, Jim. If I can now move on to Rosalind Hatch. You're okay, Rosalind? Okay. Rob Buchanan? Thank you. Is that a Sabres hat I see you have on? My God, Rob. Rob. I'll have to get you that flyer hat I promised you. Thanks, Rob. Laura Azzopardi? I'm fine. You're fine? Okay. Great, thank you, Laura. Gary Dingman? Gary, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, residents. I would just like to address the comment made in the city report regarding the fact that there is no anticipated loss in market value as a result of being in the vicinity of a marijuana grow-op. Having formerly been a municipal assessor and appraiser myself, I find that a pretty unbelievable statement. I would state that that would probably be true if these facilities were located in an industrial sector, simply because the residential housing in an industrial sector has always been appraised, factoring in the proximity to local industry. Therefore, they wouldn't be affected by any changes to the industry, type of industry. The market value would stay the same. However, when you introduce a facility that is perceived by the public as a whole to be negative, and you locate that facility in a neighborhood where it has previously non-existed, it is of my opinion that there will be a definite decrease in market value, but no decrease in assessed value. And I would also like to state that for council and residents that have attended former meetings, I wonder how you would find it hard to believe anything these people state when in the past they have totally misled council, misled residents, and misled the media, to the point where the people who purchased my house were under the impression, as stated by the owner of 462 Pinecrest, that they'll be done in April. They purchased my house under that premise. Now you can add 2 more victims to this scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dingman. Members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? With none, we'll move on to Mr. Rick Spice. Is Rick in the audience? Rick Spice? Colleen Jazik? Charles Groom? Mr. Groom, come on up. Mr. Groom, welcome.
Thank you. Charles Groom, 2400 Fire Lane 2. I guess I'm a little confused. Like, I've now spoken to this group 3 times. At one occasion, I was told that it was a regional municipality that determined zoning. I heard later now that it's something to do with the province that determines zoning. When it comes down to the federal government, I wrote a letter to Rona Ambrose. And I got a response back, and it went to you. Basically, the response said that it's up to the local municipality to determine how they're going to zone, what bylaws they are going to amend. It's up to you to decide where you want these things to be. And quite frankly, I don't think the federal government wants any part of that. And what they're probably doing is trying to give you an out, if you're willing to take it. The second part of that sentence said that we as a group should continue to press and speak with our local council in mitigating what we want to have happen. Well, we are continuing to do that. Doesn't seem to be getting us very far. I am really, really thankful that you guys are giving us time to do this, and I really appreciate it. I hope you make a wise decision about this. I really, really hope you do. Because as I wrote, and it should be in the paper, I hope, I don't want this in my backyard. I don't think anybody would want it in their backyard. If you put it in agricultural areas, chances are pretty good it's going to be near somebody's house. If you put it in an industrial location, the chances are less. And we certainly have enough open industrial property in the Niagara Peninsula between plants, industrial parks that aren't being used. It shouldn't have to be zoned agriculture. That's thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groom. Before you leave, members of council, any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Groom.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time this evening. Mr. Aquilina, did you want to comment on some of the comments, please?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to set the record straight, the City of Port Colborne is responsible for the zoning bylaw for the municipality. The province of Ontario, through their provincial policies, speak to what the future, particularly with agricultural and industrial gateway and all that. They say that, you know, agricultural land is important. Regional policy plan then speaks further into that policy. They then put together their regional policy plan, which then specify which lands throughout the entire region are in fact agricultural. What lands are to be within the urban area boundaries, what lands are hamlets. That's what the region does. It's all based on the soil classification that has been done to determine what are the soil types throughout the region. That then is the impetus to the land base map for the agricultural area. Once the region has set their regional policy plan, then it's up to the local municipality through their official plan to then dictate where in the municipality those agricultural lands are to be located. We know from that regional land base map, the provincial land use policies, these are the agricultural lands. We need to conform with the region of Niagara. They're the upper tier government. They are the ones that dictate where in the municipality agricultural land should be put in place. Then the next step is the zoning bylaw, which is the teeth of the official plan. So City of Port Colborne has that official plan in place. The zoning bylaw then gets into the details. What land uses are to be permitted in the agricultural area? What are the setbacks? It's up to the municipality of Port Colborne to do that, nobody else.
So if in fact we were to leave this alone and not touch it at all, what would be the implications compared to what we're doing now? What's the difference?
Mr. Mayor, if council did not do anything, any medical marijuana production facility would be permitted under the current agricultural zone provisions. You're looking at 30-meter setbacks from your interior side lot line and your rear lot line.
The difference in terms of what council is considering tonight?
And council has before them a lot of other provisions to be put in place. Site plan, I talked about lot coverage provisions, interior side yard setback, and I believe the main one is that extra 150 meters of a setback provision that currently you do not have that in place.
Thank you. If I can now call upon Mr. Richard Holliday. Richard Holliday. Mrs. Sheila Edwards. Thank you, Mrs. Edwards. Donna Fallon. Sherry Buchanan. Margaret Scott. Okay. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Vic Barker. Vic Barker. Giselle Barker. Diane Goodwin. You're okay? Mike Goodwin. Not here. James Kalaniuk. Okay, thank you. And finally, Mr. Frank Scott. Frank, welcome. Another person I feel very much related to now.
We will soon be on the person.
It's my Frank Scott box is now full.
Frank Scott, 394 Pinecrest Road. In all honesty, I hadn't planned on getting up tonight, and I told a few people that I wasn't, other than somehow every time I come here I get sucked in, and here I am. I'm not here to talk about Pinecrest Road, okay? And first of all, is there anything I can clarify to council on what you may have received from me in the last 3 weeks?
Members of council, any questions or comments?
Something you may not have understood, or where it came from, or why we went on that direction, or who it really came from?
Members? None? Mr. Scott.
Okay, and you have to forgive me because not planning to speak, I didn't bring my glasses, so I'll just a couple of concerns that came up in the discussion earlier. We agree 100% that the federal government has dumped this into your lap, and there's no other way to describe it. The biggest cop-out is the legislation, which basically says just tell the city what you're doing, let the fire department know, and let the police department know, and then basically you can do what you want within whatever bylaw the city puts up. And in talking to other municipalities, which I have, they completely agree. They just can't believe what the federal government has done. And part of the problem of why we're here tonight, we went through with our MP, who basically said at a town hall meeting, can't do anything about it, it's Health Canada, can't do anything about it. And we had invited Health Canada to that meeting, of which they didn't come, and when we asked our MP why they didn't, to answer our questions and tell us about it, they basically said, we don't do those things, period, end of discussion, that's the way it is. And in reading the act, that's the way they wrote it, and I do believe in you trying to take steps to control it through bylaws and bylaw amendments. You're in the same boat and the same frustration. As a clarification, Kerry was talking to the Food and Drug Act, of which growing medicinal marijuana is a legislation within the Food and Drug Act. Okay, it starts with the Food and Drug Act and works down. I asked council in any discussion on here it comes, MMPFs, and I hate that, on any discussion regarding MMPFs, please do not call this narcotic a traditional crop. It isn't, okay? It's a narcotic, and please refer to it as that. It's not a traditional crop. It's not tomatoes, potatoes. It's a narcotic. That's all I ask on that. And again, I'm jumping around because suddenly I'm busy writing. At this point, the OMB was brought up by the city planner. Toronto has not gone or has not been challenged at the OMB, and as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, Windsor had not been challenged at the OMB. In BC, the planner talked about government control. The planner talked about government controls. The government controls are in BC, and in BC, any changes by a municipality to agricultural lands within that municipality must go to the province to approve the changes. Normally, the province does not change what the city has done. It's one of these bureaucracies that are in there so that the municipality doesn't get out of control and start putting condos up on agricultural land, whereby BC will step in and say, hold it, that's not the way it goes. That's more the reasoning they have to go to the government. The government wants to control it down so it doesn't get out of control as far as what ends up on that property. That's basically what I have. And I just want to leave you with one thought. If you allow, if you permit MMPFs on agricultural land, next time you step out of the recreational center on Elizabeth Street, if you just look down Elizabeth Street, you could see an MMPF there. Because if you let it onto agricultural land versus somehow getting it into industrial, then that's what could go in on that property. And we've just spent $33 million to build that beautiful building. Do we really want that across the street? Something, again, I meant to bring up, and I apologize for jumping backwards. In talking to Smith Falls, quote unquote, it's an industry and we're taxing it as such. Smith Falls. Any questions?
Members of council, are there any questions or comments to the presenter? Councillor Bodner.
Just because Frank's been kind enough to send us a few emails, I feel like I should pick one of them out. And it's the Abbotsford and City of Delta and that whole 4 or 5 communities there. If I remember your email correctly, they did pass the bylaw that they wanted in an industrial zone, and they sent it off to the Minister of Agriculture to sign, which hasn't happened yet. But do you remember what their Plan B was?
No, Plan A in Abbotsford was they banned it.
Right.
It's Richmond that said they would control it. Both have sent everything off to their quote-unquote government officials.
Right.
Neither have heard back. They didn't anticipate any problems, but again, until somebody puts it in writing, who knows?
Right.
Abbotsford were adamant that they weren't going to put up with it.
Right.
But that's Abbotsford, and I really can't talk to them.
Sure.
I can only speak to the documentation I got from these municipalities, what I have read, what I have seen, and what I have been told.
And if I can remember your email, I believe that one of those municipalities, I called through to Abbotsford and Richmond, I believe, and one of their, if they don't get it signed by the minister, Plan B was setbacks in a zoning bylaw, much like we have. So just, I don't know if they're thinking they will get it or won't get it, but that was Plan B on at least one
That
of those.
I can't comment on what they're doing down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments to the presenter? I just have 2 questions, Frank, with respect to 2 comments that you made. You made the comment that applications in Windsor and Toronto have yet to go to the OMB.
No. Toronto has not received notification that anyone has gone to the OMB, and Windsor have not received notification that anyone has gone to the OMB.
Okay, so my question to either Mr. Aquilina or Mr. Heil, or even you, Frank, if you can answer the question is has Windsor or Toronto actually had successful applicants and then therefore have had applications for grow ops and then therefore would then be under scrutiny through the OMB?
Through Mr. Mayor, my understanding, both the City of Toronto and the City of Windsor are in a different situation than the City of Port Colborne. They don't have agricultural lands under their jurisdiction. So they have a 70-meter setback because they have considered it to be industrial, and they want to have that protection under the D6 guidelines. I'm not sure how much else I could respond by. It's a different geography.
Okay, which goes to my next question. And I know I've asked it already once. Mr. Scott mentioned the fact that council shouldn't, and I quote, let it on to these agricultural lands. What other mechanisms are available for council to not let on these uses to agricultural lands?
Mr. Mayor, we heard from legal counsel that the city cannot prohibit, only regulate. We can also direct them as well to the industrial area. That will be the next proposal before council. An amendment to the zoning bylaw for the industrial area and as well as the official plan.
But we can't force them to the industrial area.
No, Mr. Mayor, they are considered to be an agricultural use.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ackley.
Just if I might
Scott,
follow up on that. Windsor, you got a copy of their planning report late this afternoon. It basically talks to industrial lands. I don't believe it mentions agricultural at all.
And I think the reason for that is because they don't have any agricultural lands?
Yes, they do.
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, I was on their website today and I had a conversation with staff from Windsor. Their official plan does not recognize an agricultural designation. their zoning bylaw does not mention an agricultural designation or an agricultural zone. They do talk about industrial uses, and there was a certain pocket of land that they annexed in. I believe it was, and don't quote me, Tecumseh Township, that had some agricultural zones in there. But once they're going to do their new bylaw, all those uses in that former township are going to be included in the industrial zoning bylaw.
So you mean to tell me the city of Windsor has no industrial lands?
No.
I'm sorry, no agricultural lands?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. Unless something is in existence, their zoning bylaw is silent on an agricultural zone, their main zoning bylaw.
So once again, the city of Windsor has no agricultural lands?
Nothing that is designated in their official plan as agricultural.
Besides-
Whether they have some that is in existence that may be non-conforming, they all are going to be considered to be industrial in the very near future.
But even non-conforming can actually house this use?
If it's non-conforming with regard to cash cropping, then no, you would not then be allowed to then put up a building.
Okay.
Because that
So it would have
non-conforming
to have
use is established to be cash
It would have to
cropping.
have a greenhouse on it, as legal non-conforming to allow this use on it.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
I was advised that Windsor does have agricultural land that is designated for a set use, what that use is, and it's a set future use, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Which may in fact be the annexation of Tecumseh, which the future use would be industrial. Yeah, okay. Okay, members of council, any
Council?
further questions or comments to the presenter? Frank, thank you.
I can tell you that tomorrow I will finish painting a laundry room that I started 3 weeks ago.
I see you, Bob. Frank, before you sit down, I do want to thank you, because I know you've taken on this and shouldered this whole, I won't say all of it, but most of it onto your shoulders. Between you and Nancy, I think I've heard from both of you guys more than I have any other constituent in my time here since 1994. But kudos to you guys, because you obviously have a passion for this, and of course, with that, you've given us a lot of information. So I want to thank you for that, as well as your time here this evening.
If I may, we don't have a passion for this. The passion to work over it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, members of council, it's your turn. So let's get to work here. Members, if I may, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. I am going to start off with one round per councillor. I'm hoping it sticks to that. So whatever you have to say, hopefully you can say it in one round as per the procedural bylaw. Please, thank you. But I know that's not going to happen, but we'll try that out to start with. So with that, I'm going to go to the ward councillors first. Or would you prefer to be last? Last? Okay, so I have Councillor Desmarais, then I have Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dan Ecolina. Dan, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've put into this, and I know that it's been a crazy time with a lot of back and forth, and with something new like this coming on the table, it's difficult to try to handle all of the things that pop up with it. But I think that a great job has been done. I intend to fully support what we have in front of us tonight. I know that there's still more work down the road, and I'm sure that will come forward with as much interaction with the community as we've had with this. But again, I'd just like to say thank you, and I would be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I have to thank you for everyone here. You gave us information that was very important. Frank and I had a chat. He and I called each other at one point. And a lot of the information we received tonight was important information, and it was new information, so that's great. I will also support it, and I'll give you the reasons why. Right now, we have no controls, which leaves us, Port Colborne, totally open until we get something in place. If someone shows up tomorrow, buys a piece of property, and shows up at our building building department and puts in a site plan, there is nothing we can do to stop them from using the rules and regulations that we presently have. Nothing. This will at least give us something. And that's the idea behind it. The other thing is that we have asked very, very respected professional lawyers for their advice. Especially the 3 or 4 that we've asked have given us, and they're regarded as some of the best in the country and in the province. And they have told us this is the right way to go. So why pay someone the best in the country to give you advice and then turn around and say, well, we're not going to do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense at all. All the information we've been able to get from Mr. Aquilina, all the information we've been able to get from the professionals tell us we can't stop it. All we can do is regulate it. If we can't regulate it, and if we don't set this up, we have no regulations of any kind. None. And that concerns me, because they can put it right at your property door, and there's nothing we can do about it right now. About 50 meters, but what's 50 meters when you're looking at 150? So I think we have to take a serious look at that, okay? I think that everyone has to understand this is a very, very difficult decision to make. But we have to make this decision for the city to protect everyone in the city. And if we don't have any regulations, then we're putting everyone in the city, which is what a lot of you spoke about. Really, really, we're putting them in harm's way. At least this is a way of attempting to do something, which is what the federal government wanted us to do in the first place, and they should have done it, and we all know that. But we have to do it. We have no choice, and that's one of the reasons why I will be supporting it.
Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Frank, I was in Jamaica this past week, and I took my personal iPad down, and I deliberately didn't open it until Friday because I wanted to enjoy myself. And on Friday, my wife asked me, who the hell is Frank Scott? Because I sat for 2 hours and read emails, looked at my package for tonight, unlimited web time down there. You want to talk about a country with marijuana problems, Jamaica's it, believe me. So my wife will want to meet you someday, I'm sure, because she just couldn't believe the number of emails. But you know, these are important, and everything we've received, and I know a lot of these people that have sent emails, and I know, Frank, you took the lead on speaking on behalf of many people. My personal view on medical marijuana, I think it's a big bunch of BS. I'm not in favor of it. I've had a family member who's had drug problems in the past. I know there's people out there say it's good for medicinal purposes. I'll reserve that judgment. I just don't think it's a good thing. I don't think this business is good for Port Colborne, and I supported a hell of a lot of businesses in this town. I think Birdie Golf Carts is one that had as many people at it as we've had here. We've gone to a OMB hearing. We voted, majority voted against what staff and our lawyers have told us. We lost that. Although I know David and I did support it, but that's water under the bridge. But we know from that experience, and I'll tell you, this man right here knows his job. I'm in Jamaica. I met a gentleman from Niagara Falls who worked in the engineering department of the town of Fort Erie who just left. We talked for an hour about Mr. Aquilina. In fact, we talked about this issue a little bit. Mr. Aquilina has a lot of people out there that give him a lot of accolades. He knows what he's doing, and I trust Dan, I really do. I think Councillor Doucette said it right as far as the lawyers that we've had. We just didn't go to one lawyer. We went to 4 separate lawyers, and even this evening when we met with our lawyer, he was emailing on his phone to get information for this meeting. I think that's bodes well for our staff, Dan and Bob. and in this council to listen to what's out there. I could sit here and say, no, I'm against this. Let's throw this business out of the city of Port Colborne. I think it's bad. I really do truly believe it is bad for the city of Port Colborne. However, I don't think that's reality. And I've got to stand on this side of the floor and look at reality. So I take advice from this gentleman here, who's put a super package together, and as what was said earlier by our fellow councillors, and I'm sure the Ward 4 councillors say the same thing. Let's close the door somewhat, because we know we can't close it totally. I think Dan has done that in this report. I think he's taken some information from previous meetings, put it into the report. Information from our city councillors has been put in this report. I think he's taken things to the nth degree that he's allowed to do, which I congratulate him for that. And he has listened to us, he's listened to you, and as well as his staff, because it wasn't just Dan. I'm sure he's had his whole staff and our senior staff work on this. So I will support what Dan's put forward. I do look forward to the official OP changes so that we can try to drive more of this to an industrial park, which is, if it has to be here, that's my preferred spot. But our experts are telling us it is agricultural. There's a precedent with especially this business that it's been agricultural. They've had greenhouses, whether it's a tomato crop, a tobacco crop, or a marijuana crop, it's crops. Agree with it or not, I don't think, that's my personal opinion, but on the legal side, I think they have given us good advice. So I will support Dan's, Mr. Aquilina's recommendation here tonight. But again, I don't agree with the gentleman, sorry. If you want to pick up and move on, I wish that's what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers, members of council? Further speakers. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll echo what Bill said. You don't want to be lectured and spoken to. I think the 8 of us, the 9 of us, staff as well, if we had our druthers, yeah, we'd rather it be in an industrial area. And I think we all sat in the meeting earlier this evening with the lawyer, and all we were looking for was a sliver. Just open the door a crack. Just give us an out, and we'll jump all over it. And there isn't, because of the use that's existing and the definition of agriculture. It is what it is. If we could drive it somewhere, we would. Some of the towns that have banned it, our advice from our legal counsel was they may have said no. It may scare people off from applying for that location in their town. But if somebody does, his legal opinion was the ban will not hold up. End of discussion. You can say it in the paper that we've banned it and we're waiting for provincial approval of it, but our legal counsel, and it's probably the preeminent law firm in Niagara, has said that you can't do that. There's no how, no way. And it's been said that marijuana is a narcotic and it's not the same as growing a plant, but the agricultural designation says that it's a plant that is grown. It doesn't discern between a narcotic or a rose or corn. It just says that it's a plant that is grown. And we're stuck with that. Until that changes, the definition of agricultural changes, we're stuck with what we've got. So this zoning bylaw is actually to benefit you. And we know that it's not much, but it's the only tool that we have. I wish that, yeah, the proponents would take us up on some of our industrial land that's vacant. I'd love you to go. We've got lots of it that's away from everybody. But they've got the land that they've got, and that's where they want to build, and we're trying to help you out as much as possible. Until such time as the provincial government, the regional government, or the federal government gives us more teeth that we can sink into this, we're stuck with where we are. And that's the best that we can do. So I think you're going to hear from, I won't speak for everybody, but supportive of the zoning bylaw to try to help you out as much as we can. And like it's been stated before, this got just plunked right down on top of us. And there's not much that we can do. So the next federal election, you may want to talk to the people that come knocking on your door and ask them what they're going to do for small towns like Port Colborne that have agricultural land that allows this to happen, and what they're going to do to prevent it in the future. So that's about the best I can say is I'm going to support what Dan's put forward because it's the best that we've got to help you. And that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of council, further questions or comments? Councillor Butters. Councillor Kenny, you all right? Councillor Butters.
Well, I'll tell you, this has probably been the most difficult situation in all the years on council. I think this situation is in many ways more difficult than Nyon, more difficult than almost anything else. I have laid awake nights mulling over the emails that I've received, and I want to thank every one of you that sent them. I appreciate all that information that you've taken the time to research and send along with your comments and your concerns. Where we are right now is Moo Boom Organics exists in this municipality. That's where we're at. Some of the other places maybe don't have that, but we do. And we need to deal with it in the best way to protect the residents across Port Colborne, wherever another one can set up, not just Moo Booms, but anybody else. And I'm at a loss to know how, other than this bylaw, how we can do it because of the legal advice that we've received, because of opinions across many different sources. This seems to be our only way to actually protect the residents who live out there. And it isn't perfect. It is not a perfect solution. That's the really hard part because we can't come up with a perfect solution. So we will be relying on, you know, to whatever degree the proponents, if they get their license and proceed, we're going to be relying on a lot of things that they have said here tonight and in past meetings that say they want to be a good neighbor and they want to be part of this community, and I'm going to really hope that that's being said in a sincere way. And for right now, I wish there was something more carved in stone than that, but there isn't. I have a couple of issues that I certainly share with you, the market value of people's homes. I'd like to see this council commit to for continuing discussion about that and making sure that if there's ways that we can put something into place that protects the people's values of their homes out there. I'd like to see that, and I'd also like this council to make a commitment that we move forward quickly, immediately on a policy of a public liaison committee as well. I think that's critical to as we move forward. Absolutely critical. I wish we didn't have the constraints that we're under, but we do, and we have to deal with what is, not what we wish it could be. I will support this bylaw amendment, but I'll also make sure that the proponents, if they get this license and follows through, that they're going to live up to what they've said in these rooms as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been at a lot of contentious meetings and issues. If you guys can remember, when I was first mayor, we dealt with an ion issue. I chaired a meeting, an auditorium full of quite a few hundred people that were none too happy. That, while it bothered me, it never bothered me like this. This is something that just, you kept looking for escape routes or looking for options and looking for what other people were doing, but what other people were doing that had some concrete evidence that it was going to hold up. And yeah, people have said, no, you can't do this. But at the end of the day, people that we think have some very good knowledge in the legal field and the planning have told us that say whatever you like, but it ain't going to work for you. So we have to work with what we got. We don't have a lot of options here, folks. And like Councillor Butter said, it has kept many of us up at night. These are people that, you know, Councillor Butters and I, and a lot of people on this council, people that we've dealt with in the community for years. And in a lot of cases, your mothers and fathers too. You know, so we have a vested interest in trying to make this work for the community, but, you know, and I just couldn't come up with any other answers. There isn't. There isn't any other way to go than what this bylaw will help us at least put them things in place. Myself, along with Councillor Butters, took the step of meeting with the proponents to gauge their feelings on the community. Are they sincere when they say that they want to work with the community? Are they sincere when they say they want to hear from the community, have open houses, invite you in to see, explain to you what they're doing? We can only take their word for it. But I got to tell you, there's for sure 2 councillors here, and I think there's almost all of them, Mr. Keeley, they're going to hold your feet to the fire. So don't think this is the end of whatever is going along here. I will support this bylaw because I don't see any other way. I could say, hey, you know what? No, I'm not going to support this. I'm going to go with the residents and I'm not going to support it. But my heart wouldn't be in that because we have a certain responsibility to the broader community as well as you when we know something can't work, that we should be voting the right way. And I think I've heard from councillors that have kind of resigned themselves, like taking cod liver oil. It might be something you just hold your nose and swallow. So anyways, that's all I'm going to say, and I will support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments or questions, members of council? Further comments? Well, I'm going to make a few comments. And I have to say, as was outlined this evening, there's no question that members of council, including myself, have been torn over this issue. And I say torn because you hear both sides and you try to be very fair and you try to strike a balance between a proponent and an initiative that they're embarking on, and of course the sensitive land issues that surround the proponent's intended area or envelope of building. I do have to say, and I think Mr. Keeley, you understand this, that after I received the correspondence from your legal counsel the other day, that for the most part, it's, in my opinion, it spoke volumes of your intentions, and I'm not very happy about it. I am not happy about it at all. And with that said, I would only expect that what you've communicated to myself, as well as members of council, and quite frankly, our community, would be done in sincerity, and will be done with the expectations of what these folks are now being, quite frankly, rammed down their throats by both the federal government and, of course, the provincial planning policies that we unfortunately have to abide by. I made it very clear throughout this whole process, and I personally wanted to ensure that everyone was given the proper information. And as comments were coming in from the presenters, as well as the folks asking questions from members of council, that in fact no one would then leave the podium and or their positions on their comments or debate without having 100% clarity. Because I wanted to ensure that everyone walks out of here tonight with 100% clarity with respect to both sides. And having said that, to not leave with any expectations of what council and or the regulations, legislation that council works under can be manipulated or changed. And I have to admire members of council because, quite frankly, folks, it's very easy for a municipality to take a position before applications are applied for. It's very easy to try and scare people off with positions with respect to an issue like this. But where the rubber hits the pavement is when the applications are actually made. And the implications to the municipality, including the personal implications and liabilities that members of council take on financially, with then what happens when that rubber hits the road and the decisions that those municipalities make. It's very easy to save your political hide around this horseshoe using the financial means of the taxpayers of our community. Happens all the time in politics. As Councillor Bodner says, yes, we support you, but at the same time, is it fair to the taxpayers of Port Colborne to say that, knowing full well if you were to end up at an OMB hearing or under judicial review, the taxpayers of Port Colborne will be paying that price? That's not responsible, and makes our decision even more difficult. The new bylaw will in fact regulate future operation of a new building being built. But as I said earlier, and I think I can speak for all of council, because I do sense defeat in their voices as they stand up before you and recognize the realities of this issue. But while I sense that defeat in their voices, make no mistake about it, and I can speak on their behalf with 100% confidence, this isn't over. And when I say this isn't over, it isn't just in the best interests of you, it's also in the best interests of the proponent. Okay, so this is, again, as the mayor of this community, I have to look at both sides of this, and I can't take on a bias. And there's a reality attached to this, not only here in the city of Port Colborne, but our neighbors to the east in Fort Erie, northeast in Niagara Lake, north in St. Catharines, and all across Canada. But I think it's incumbent upon this council, although in little old Port Colborne, a population of 18,000, to take on a role of leadership and send a strong message to the federal government that, come on guys, enough is enough. You can't just simply turn around and dump these things on us and expect municipalities with the limited resources we have available to us to deal with it. Now again, no bias, to try and strike that balance between the proponent's intentions and the sensitive land issues attached to it. And I don't think for a second, from what I've heard, that a lot of you folks are against the intentions. It's just where those intentions are going to be placed. And I've heard that over and over and over. This belongs in an industrial zone. And I would even urge the proponent to even consider that, with a bit of incentive for municipality to go into the industrial zone. Which now brings up my next comments. What I would ask that members of council do is, and I'm sensing that members of council are going to in fact support the recommendation, which I do as well, because I think this regulation takes it to that next step of regulation. If we were to do nothing, we wouldn't have any controls, especially with respect to what's outlined in the regulation, setbacks, etc. But I would also include in the recommendation that we influence Health Canada to hold any licensing in abeyance until further study is completed that takes into consideration the concerns of our residents, and I'm sure are consistent with residents across the country. So I would recommend that that be placed as a recommendation attached to the recommendation of this. And quite frankly, I think that does good for both sides. I think it does good for the side that's against it as being attached to a sensitive land area, but I also think it's good for those proponents because quite frankly, there's a lot of loose ends there that can come back to bite you in the butt, regardless of what side of the fence you can be on. And it also clarifies a lot of the issues that the municipality is dealing with respect to those loose ends. Secondly, is, and within that same realm, is to request that MPAC ensure that proper assessments are attached to the uses of the property. Proper assessments are attached to uses of the property. We've heard the flip side of that, where we see in industrial zones that uses on those properties are assessed accordingly. Well, I think the same thing can be said about agricultural zones, and it's no different than the wine industry. If they have a retail commercial operation on that piece of property, they are assessed retail commercial. If they have an industrial component attached to that property, they are assessed industrial. And then, of course, the rest would be assessed agricultural as it relates to the cash crop. So as part of the recommendation, we also request that MPAC ensure proper assessments are attached to the uses of the property, i.e. commercial and industrial. Next, and I think Councillor Butters brought this up, is that a PLC, a Public Liaison Committee, be established to work in tandem, not after the fact, but to work in tandem with any application that is submitted that has received approval. I don't think we should go down that road until any application has received approval by the Health Canada, to then proceed to the next steps. And then, of course, then the PLC would attach itself in tandem with that application to work with our planning department with respect to an application that's being submitted. So therefore, we still got some work to do here, guys. This is just the first step. This is just the first step, and it's the next steps. And I want to be very clear, is to strike that balance. I think the perfect world and the perfect way to strike that balance is to simply have this use in industrial area, and we have some great lands in our dry industrial lands by our city line along 140. That would be a perfect location for this. And of course, we can talk to the proponent about adding incentive to actually put them out there. But having said that, we have to deal with what we have in front of us today. So with that, members of council, I would recommend that those recommendations be added overall to the recommendation. I also recommend that within the whole process, a property protection plan be a part of the process. Okay. Okay. Other than that, all I can say, folks, is thank you. And I say thank you not only to the proponents, but I also say equally, if not more importantly, thank you to the residents. It is your community. You do have concerns. Those concerns are respected. But I also hope that you respect the position that members of council are in here as well. And as Councillor Bodner and Councillor Butters alluded to, we're doing the best we can with what we have. All we can depend on now is further influence by Health Canada, which we're going to pursue, rest assured. But equally as important is cooperation and involvement from the proponents. And hopefully we can nail this thing down. And quite frankly, as I said earlier, be a leader so that other communities don't have to do this, go through the same challenges. So again, thank you for your participation. Thank you for all the work that you've done in the past. Members of council, with that, are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the Association of Municipalities of Ontario are working on this, and I would suspect that, but I don't know for sure, that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities also have an interest in this, and you'll be at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in May sometime. I wonder if we could, and it doesn't have to be part of this thing tonight, but I would urge council to contact both of those associations and urge them to hurry up the talk on this and see where they can get to, and if they can put pressure on the federal government, like the mayor's been saying. So while it might not be exactly on tonight's, I think they can be a great resource across the country as well as right in Ontario.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of council, any further questions or comments? With that, members of council, your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. We're now going to move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be presenting a motion at the next council meeting that will allow and request that engineering reinvestigate the corner of Elizabeth Street and Canale Street East for the dangers that are in that area with traffic.
Thank you, Councillor. So Councillor Doucette is asking for two motions actually to come out at the next meeting. One is for reconsideration, and secondly, to bring that motion back forward before council. Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, you got that? Any further notices of motion? Members? With none, we'll move on to motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Members, we're now going to move on to the council portion of our agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? With none, I do have two sets of minutes here. The minutes of the 6th meeting special of council dated March 24th, 2014, and the minutes of the 7th meeting regular of council dated March 24th, 2014. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? Items in total on the agenda. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Bodner, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Can I get that again, please? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. I do have one proclamation, members, and I'll be looking for a mover and seconder, and that proclamation is that whereas Public Rail Safety Week is to be held across Canada from April 28th to May 4th, 2014, and whereas it is in the public's interest to raise citizens' awareness on reducing avoidable accidents, injuries, and damage caused by collisions at level crossings or incidents involving trains and the citizens of our community. And whereas Operation Lifesaver is a public-private partnership whose aim is to work with the rail industry, government, police services, the media, and other agencies and the public to raise rail safety awareness. And whereas Operation Lifesaver has requested that City Council adopt this resolution in support of its ongoing effort to save lives and prevent injuries in communities, including our municipality here in the city of Port Colborne. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vance M. Badaway, proclaim the week of April 28th to May 4th, 2014 as Public Rail Safety Week here in the city of Port Colborne. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. I now have the minutes of the boards, commissions, and committees, and I will do them in block if you don't mind. The first set of minutes are the minutes of the Port Colborne Gateway Business Improvement Area Board of Management meeting of March 4th, 2014, and April 1st, 2014. Also, the minutes of the Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee meeting of January 22nd, 2014, and finally, the minutes of the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting dated February 19th, 2014. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Elliott, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Doucette.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I thought that was I only needed to do it once. What I would like is I'm going to be putting out a motion so that we can revisit the corner of Elizabeth Street and Cali Street East, as well as make sure that when we revisit it that we restudy it.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Mr. Howe.
Just to clarify, what we will do is bring 2011, whatever the numbers, it will come back on the next agenda, and then you will consider that at that point in time. And then you can provide direction to us.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Howe. Thank you, Councillor. Everybody's good with that. We'll now move on to the introduction of the bylaws. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 60592-514 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 11509781 as amended to prescribe standards and setbacks and to incorporate the requirement for site plan control for medical marijuana production facilities. Bylaw 60602614 being a bylaw to designate a site plan control area and delegate council's power under section 41 of the Planning Act, establishing a site plan control procedure and the duties of the Director of Planning and Development. Bylaw 60612714 being a bylaw to authorize entering into an encroachment agreement with the Smoking Buddha 265 King Street, Port Colborne. Bylaw 6062-2814, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with the Welland and District SPCA regarding animal control and municipal pound services. Bylaw 6063-2914, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4876-10106, being a bylaw to establish a committee known as the Port Colborne Waynfleet Physician Recruitment, Retention, and Medical Education Committee, and to provide for the appointment of members thereto, and to repeal bylaw 5583-1311. Bylaw 6064-3014, being a bylaw to lease part of lots 17 and 18, concession 5, former township of Humberston, now in the city of Port Colborne, to Stam Acres Limited. Bylaw 6065-3114, being a bylaw to temporarily close a section of King Street to vehicular traffic April 26 and 27, 2014, and to repeal bylaw 6053-1914. And finally, bylaw 6066-3214, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5613-4311, being a bylaw to establish the Flavors Advisory Committee.
And without a hiccup. Well done. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Butters, any questions or comments to this? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 6067-1314, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its special and regular meetings of April 14, 2014.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of Council, if I can have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Danch, any questions or comments? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Ash, can I ask a favor? Do you have the meeting schedule handy? Our next meetings?
Right there, Mayor. It's on the board.
I can't see that.
How is that your work?
It's, yeah. Thanks, Bob. Before I ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting, we had everything taken care of in closed session earlier, so we don't have to go back into closed session. I will announce, that's better, Bob. I will announce our meeting schedule. We do have our next meeting scheduled for April 16th. That meeting is, that's this Wednesday, and that's going to be, that's a committee of the whole meeting, and that's a special committee of the whole meeting. So for you folks out there in the public that would like to come and watch council deal with its capital budget, our capital budget, and with that, deal with really rationalizing and looking at a lot of our capital assets, and of course a lot of the investments that the city has, and of course council giving direction with respect to moving forward past 2014 with respect to our capital assets, and of course with that a new strategy and a strategic plan with respect to looking at our current capital possible investments that we're going to make, including our CIPs, including our roads, including our facilities, and of course everything else that you directors are dealing with on a daily basis. So that will be happening here in the chamber beginning at 5:30 p.m. this Wednesday, April 16th. On Monday, April 28th, Committee of the Whole and Council, once again here in the chamber, beginning at 6:30 p.m. So members of Council, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Danch, are there any questions or comments? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Have a wonderful week.